At 4:47 a.m., with her infant son screaming from hunger and not a dollar in her purse, Lena Ward did the one thing she swore she'd never do. She texted the father who didn't know his child existed. Victor Moretti wasn't just her dangerous ex. He was the city's most feared mafia boss, a man whose world was built on blood and power. But desperation doesn't care about pride or fear. When her fingers hit send on those 5 words, "Your son has no milk," she didn't just open a door she'd bolted shut 18 months ago. She detonated a bomb that would reshape 3 lives forever. If you want to see how one message changed everything, stay until the end. And if this story grabs you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The apartment was freezing. Lena Ward sat on the edge of her sagging mattress, her 2-month-old son wailing in her arms, and stared at the empty bottle on the nightstand. The formula can beside it had been scraped clean 3 days ago. She'd stretched it as far as humanly possible, diluting each bottle a little more, rationing every scoop like it was gold dust. But you couldn't dilute nothing, and now she had nothing. The digital clock on the microwave in her kitchenette blinked 4:47 a.m. in angry red numbers. In 13 minutes, her son would have been crying for exactly 2 hours. She'd walked him, bounced him, sung to him until her voice cracked. She'd tried giving him water in the bottle, but he was too young for that. And he knew the difference. He knew what he needed, and she couldn't give it to him. The rent notice was still taped to her door from yesterday. 72 hours to pay or vacate. The utilities warning had come 3 days before that. She had $4.37 to her name. Her phone had 11% battery left because she couldn't afford to turn the heat on, which meant she couldn't afford to charge anything without watching every percentage point disappear. Lena looked down at her son's red, furious face. His name was Owen. She'd named him after her father, who died when she was 12. Her father would have been ashamed to see her now, 26 years old, alone, broke, unable to feed her own child. But he would have been more ashamed if he knew who Owen's father was. She closed her eyes and took a breath that hurt her chest. There was one option, one single option she'd locked away in a place so deep she'd almost convinced herself it didn't exist. But at 4:47 a.m., with her baby screaming and her breasts empty because she'd stopped producing milk 2 weeks ago from stress and malnutrition, that locked box cracked open. Her phone sat on the nightstand beside the empty bottle. She picked it up. Her hands were shaking as she opened her contacts. She scrolled past the handful of names still there. Her former coworker who'd stopped answering after Lena couldn't make it to her wedding, the landlord whose number she'd saved out of necessity, the clinic where Owen had his checkups that she could barely afford. And then, at the bottom, a number with no name attached. She'd deleted his contact the day she left, but she'd never deleted the number itself. Some part of her, the part that had loved him once, the part that had been terrified of him always, knew that erasing him completely might mean erasing her last lifeline if the world ever collapsed this far. The world had collapsed. Lena stared at the 10 digits. She hadn't spoken to Victor Moretti in 18 months, hadn't seen him in 19. The last time they'd been in the same room, she told him she needed space to think about their relationship. Then she'd disappeared in the middle of the night with one suitcase and a pregnancy test in her pocket showing 2 pink lines. She'd never told him about Owen. How could she? Victor Moretti wasn't someone you tied to a child. He wasn't someone you gave that kind of leverage, that kind of vulnerability. He was a man whose business was violence, whose reputation was built on fear, whose world had no room for something as fragile and pure as a baby. So she'd run. She'd changed her number, moved across the city to this rotting neighborhood where his people would never look, and she'd worked 3 jobs while pregnant until her body gave out, and she'd nearly lost Owen at 7 months. After that, she'd been too high risk to work, and the money had evaporated like steam. But she'd told herself it was worth it. Anything was worth keeping her son away from that life. Except now her son was starving. Lena typed the message with shaking thumbs. "Your son has no milk." She stared at it for 30 seconds. Her finger hovered over the send button while Owen's cries escalated into something that sounded less like anger and more like genuine suffering. She hit send. Then she dropped the phone like it had burned her and immediately wanted to throw up. What had she just done? What had she just opened? Victor didn't even know Owen existed. That message would hit him like a freight train. He'd have questions. He'd have demands. He'd come here, and once he came here, once he saw this place and understood what she'd been hiding, her phone buzzed. Lena grabbed it so fast she nearly dropped Owen. The message was short. Address. That was it. One word. No questions, no shock, no anger. Just a command. Her stomach twisted. That was Victor. No hesitation, no wasted time. He saw a problem. He moved. It was what had made him so dangerous. It was what had made him so magnetic when she'd been too young and too stupid to understand what kind of man he really was. She typed her address with numb fingers and hit send. The reply came within seconds. Don't open the door for anyone but me. 20 minutes. Lena's heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. 20 minutes. He was coming here. Victor Moretti was coming to her crumbling studio apartment in the worst part of the city, and he was going to see everything, the peeling paint, the broken heat, the empty cabinets, the son he didn't know he had screaming in her arms. She looked around the apartment with fresh eyes, seeing it the way he would see it. The mattress on the floor because she'd sold the bed frame 4 months ago. The single burner hot plate because the stove didn't work and the landlord wouldn't fix it. The black mold creeping up the corner of the bathroom. The window that didn't close all the way, letting in the freezing February air. This was where she'd raised his son for 2 months. This was what she'd chosen over him. Lena stood up and started pacing, trying to calm Owen, trying to calm herself. She couldn't do this. She couldn't face Victor. Not like this. Not with proof of her failure crying in her arms and evidence of her poverty spread across every surface. But Owen was hungry. Owen needed food, and she'd already hit send. The 20 minutes felt like 20 seconds. When the knock came, it was soft, almost gentle. That was somehow worse than if he'd pounded on the door. It meant he was in control. It meant he wasn't angry. It meant he was thinking. Lena walked to the door and opened it. Victor Moretti stood in her hallway, and the sight of him punched the air from her lungs. He looked exactly the same, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black wool coat that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. His dark hair was shorter than she remembered, cut close on the sides. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines, except for his eyes, those deep brown eyes that had always been able to pin her in place without a single word. He was holding grocery bags. 4 of them, hanging from his hands like they weighed nothing. Victor's eyes went to Owen first. He stared at the baby in her arms with an expression Lena couldn't read. Then his gaze traveled over her, the sweatpants she'd been wearing for 3 days, the oversized t-shirt with formula stains on the shoulder, her unwashed hair pulled into a bun. Finally, he looked past her into the apartment. Something flickered across his face, something that might have been anger or might have been pain. "Let me in, Lena," he said quietly. She stepped back. Victor walked into her apartment, and the space seemed to shrink around him. He wasn't just tall. He carried a presence that filled rooms, that made people nervous, that reminded everyone exactly who he was. In her tiny studio, that presence was suffocating. He set the grocery bags on her counter, the only clear surface in the kitchen area, and turned to face her. "How old is he?" Victor asked. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something sharp. 2 months, Lena whispered. 9 weeks. Victor did the math in his head. She watched him do it, watched his jaw tighten. "You were pregnant when you left." It wasn't a question. "Yes." Owen was still crying, though his wails had softened to exhausted whimpers. Victor's eyes went to him again, and this time they stayed there. "What's his name?" "Owen." "Owen," Victor repeated. He said it carefully, like he was testing how it felt. Then he looked at Lena, and the sharpness underneath his calm cracked open. "You didn't tell me." "No." "You've been here for 18 months, raising my son in this—" He cut himself off, his hands flexing at his sides. "You didn't tell me." "I couldn't." Lena's arms tightened around Owen. "Your world isn't safe for a child." "And this is?" Victor gestured at the apartment, his voice rising for the first time. "You think this is better? You think I would have let you live like this if I'd known? I didn't want your money." "He's hungry, Lena." Victor's voice cracked like a whip. "Your son is crying because he's starving, and you didn't tell me he existed because you were too proud or too scared or too—" He stopped, took a breath. When he spoke again, his voice was back under control, but barely. I'm not doing this now. Where are his bottles? Lena pointed mutely to the kitchenette. Victor moved past her, pulling a large can of formula from one of the grocery bags. She watched him read the label, measure the water from the sink into a bottle with absolute precision, add the formula, screw the cap on, and shake it. He'd never held a baby in his life, as far as she knew, but his hands were steady. Is this the right temperature? He asked, turning to her. Lena tested it on her wrist. It's fine. Victor crossed the small space between them, and, for the first time in 19 months, came close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and cedar dark that brought back 1,000 memories she'd tried to bury. Can I hold him? He asked. Lena's first instinct was to say no, to pull Owen closer and tell Victor he'd lost the right to ask. But Owen was crying, and the bottle was ready, and she was so tired she could barely stand. She transferred Owen into Victor's arms. For a second, Victor looked almost uncertain. He adjusted his grip, supporting Owen's head the way she'd taught herself from YouTube videos, and brought the bottle to the baby's lips. Owen latched on immediately and started drinking like he was dying of thirst. The apartment went quiet except for the sound of Owen's desperate sucking. Victor stared down at his son. His face had gone completely still. Lena watched emotions move through his eyes too fast to name: shock, wonder, anger, something that might have been grief. He has your nose, Victor said finally. His voice was rough. Lena almost laughed, but it came out as something closer to a sob. He has your eyes. Does he? Can't you tell? Victor looked up at her, and for just a second, the hard mask slipped. He looked lost. I don't know what I'm looking at, he admitted. I don't know what I'm supposed to see. You didn't give me the chance to know. The words hit harder than any accusation. Lena sank onto the edge of her mattress. I was trying to protect him. From me. From your life. They're the same thing, Lena. Victor sat down beside her, still holding Owen, still feeding him. The mattress dipped under his weight. You can't separate them. I know what I am. I've always known. But this... He looked down at Owen, whose eyes were starting to drift closed as he drank. You should have told me. Would you have let me go? The silence stretched long enough to be an answer. No, Victor said finally. I wouldn't have. But I would have made sure you had everything. I would have made sure he had everything. You wouldn't be living in a place with black mold and no heat. You wouldn't be choosing between rent and formula. You wouldn't be... Alone? Lena finished. Victor turned to look at her. Yes, you wouldn't be alone. Owen had finished the bottle. Victor set it aside and adjusted the baby against his shoulder, patting his back with surprising gentleness. A few seconds later, Owen burped, and a small smile cracked across Victor's face. It was the first time Lena had seen him smile in almost 2 years. He's perfect, Victor said quietly. Lena felt tears burn her eyes. I know. How have you been managing? I haven't. The admission came out flat. I've been failing, slowly. The rent's overdue. The utilities are about to be shut off. I have $4 until I can find work again, but I can't find work because I can't afford childcare. And I can't afford childcare because I don't have work. It's a loop I can't break. Victor's jaw tightened again. Why didn't you call sooner? Because I was still trying to protect him from you. And now? Lena looked at her son, sleeping against Victor's shoulder with his tiny mouth still working in his sleep like he was dreaming about milk. Now I'm out of options, she whispered. Victor stood up, still holding Owen with a care that looked almost natural. He walked to the window, looking out at the pre-dawn darkness, and Lena watched his reflection in the glass. Pack a bag, he said. Her stomach dropped. What? For both of you. Pack whatever you need for a few days. Victor, I can't just... He turned around, and the look on his face stopped her mid-sentence. This ends today, Lena. You don't have heat. You don't have food. You can't pay rent. Your son is 2 months old, and he's been living in conditions that could get him taken away from you if the wrong person saw this place. His voice was calm, but there was iron underneath it. I'm not asking. Pack a bag. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, somewhere warm, somewhere with food and clean water and everything a baby needs. He paused. My home. Lena's heart started racing. I can't live with you. You're not living here anymore. That's not negotiable. Victor crossed back to her and carefully transferred Owen into her arms. The baby stirred but didn't wake. I'm going to unload the rest of these groceries. You're going to pack. And then we're leaving. You can't just decide. I can. Victor's eyes locked on hers. Because you made me a father without my knowledge, and you've been raising my son in poverty for 2 months without my help. And those facts mean you don't get to make unilateral decisions anymore. We do this together now, or I make them for you. Your choice. It should have made her angry. It should have made her fight back. But Lena was too exhausted, too worn down, too relieved that someone was finally taking some of the weight. One night, she said. We'll stay one night, and then we'll figure something else out. Victor studied her face. Okay. I mean it, Victor. I know you do. He turned back to the groceries and started unpacking. Formula, diapers, baby wipes, jars of pureed food for when Owen was older, bottles, pacifiers. Then food for her, bread, eggs, cheese, fruit, things that didn't need cooking. But one night becomes 2 when you see that he's sleeping through for the first time because he's warm and fed. 2 becomes 3 when you're not worried about the lights going out. And 3 becomes however long it takes for you to understand that I'm not letting either of you go again. Lena held Owen closer. This doesn't mean I forgive you for everything. I know. It doesn't mean I trust you. I know that too. And it doesn't mean we're together. Victor paused, his back still to her. Lena, we were never not together. You just ran far enough that you could pretend we were. Before she could respond, he turned around with a package of diapers. Show me how to change him, Victor said. I'm going to need to know. The drive to Victor's house took 40 minutes. Lena sat in the back of his car, a sleek black SUV that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years, with Owen's carrier strapped in beside her. Victor had installed the car seat base himself with the kind of meticulous attention she remembered from when he used to check her seatbelt before driving anywhere. Some things hadn't changed. The city slipped past the tinted windows as dawn started to break. They drove out of her neighborhood with its boarded-up shops and chain-link fences, through downtown with its empty streets, and into the hills where the houses got bigger and the gates got taller. Victor's estate was at the end of a private road. Lena had been here once before, about 2 years ago, before everything fell apart. It had intimidated her then. It terrified her now. The gate opened automatically as they approached. Victor pulled through and up a long driveway lined with bare trees. The house at the end was massive, stone and glass and sharp modern lines that looked like they'd been carved out of the hillside. You remodeled, Lena said quietly. Had to. Old place had too many bad memories. Victor glanced at her in the rearview mirror. I bought this one 6 months ago. Fresh start. He pulled into a garage that held 4 other cars, all of them expensive. The door closed behind them with a quiet hum. Victor got out first and came around to help with Owen's carrier. Lena unbuckled it and let him lift it out, watching the way he handled it, carefully, like it was made of glass. They walked through a mudroom into the house itself, and Lena's breath caught. Everything was different from the old place. Where that had been dark wood and heavy furniture, this was light and open. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city below. The floors were pale hardwood. The walls were white. It felt clean, new, safe. Guest room is upstairs, Victor said. I had it prepared after I got your message. Lena looked at him sharply. You had time to prepare a room? I made calls on the way. He led her up a floating staircase to the 2nd floor and down a hallway. This is yours. He opened a door. The room inside was beautiful. A large bed with white linens, a dresser, a chair by the window, and in the corner, a bassinet that looked brand new. Lena walked in slowly, carrying her pathetic duffel bag that held 2 changes of clothes and Owen's 3 salvaged onesies. The bathroom's through there, Victor said, pointing. Towels are in the cabinet. There's a nursery across the hall that's being stocked today. Cribs, changing table, everything. Should be done by tonight. Lena set her bag down and turned to face him. You're really doing this? Yes. Why? Victor set Owen's carrier gently on the floor and straightened. For a long moment, he just looked at her. "Because he's mine," he said finally. "And because you're—" He stopped himself. "Because you needed help and you asked. That's enough." "I'm not staying long." "We'll see." "Victor, get some sleep, Lena." He moved toward the door. "I'll watch him. You look like you haven't slept in weeks." "I can't just—" "Yes, you can." Victor paused in the doorway. "You're safe here. Both of you. I promise you that. Whatever else you don't trust me with this." He closed the door before she could argue. Lena stood in the middle of the beautiful room holding her duffel bag and felt the full weight of the last 2 months crash down on her. Her legs gave out. She sank onto the edge of the bed and put her face in her hands. She'd done it. She'd actually contacted Victor. She'd let him into Owen's life. She'd brought her son into the world she'd run from. And the worst part, the part that made her chest ache with something too complicated to name, was that it felt like relief. When Lena woke up, the sun was high in the sky and her phone said it was 2:34 p.m. She sat up in a panic. Owen! Where was Owen? She threw off the blankets. When had she gotten under blankets? And ran to the door, yanking it open. The hallway was quiet. Lena followed the sound of voices downstairs. As she got closer, she recognized Victor's low murmur, and then her heart stopped. A woman's voice. She came around the corner into the living room and froze. Victor was sitting on the couch, holding Owen against his shoulder. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair sat beside him, watching as he gently bounced the baby. "Like this?" Victor was asking. "Perfect," the woman said warmly. "You're a natural. He's so content." "He wasn't an hour ago. Screamed through the entire diaper change." "That's normal. They hate being cold and exposed. You'll get faster with practice." Victor looked up and saw Lena. Something in his expression softened. "You're awake," he said. The woman turned and smiled. "You must be Lena. I'm Caroline. Mr. Moretti hired me to help with the baby while you settle in." Lena's brain was still catching up. "You hired a nurse?" "Nanny," Victor corrected. "Caroline has 30 years of experience. She'll be here during the day to help with Owen and teach us what we need to know." "Teach us?" Lena repeated. Victor stood up, still holding Owen like he'd been doing it his whole life. "I told you, we're doing this together now." Caroline gathered her bag and stood. "I'll give you two some privacy. I've prepared bottles for the next few feedings. They're in the warmer in the kitchen. There's a schedule on the counter." She smiled at Lena. "Get some rest, dear. You look like you need it." She left through the front door, and Lena heard it click shut behind her. The silence felt heavy. "You can't just hire people without asking me," Lena said finally. "I can, and I did." Victor walked over and transferred Owen into her arms. The baby was clean, wearing a new onesie she'd never seen before, and he smelled like baby soap. He needed things. I got them. That's how this works now. Lena looked down at her son. He was staring up at her with those dark eyes that were definitely Victor's, and her chest ached. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "Want what?" "To need you." Victor's hand came up, and for a second she thought he was going to touch her face. Instead, he brushed his thumb across Owen's cheek. "You don't need me," he said quietly. "But he does. And I'm not going anywhere." Lena met his eyes. "What are you trying to do, Victor?" "Be his father." He held her gaze. "Be whatever you'll let me be." "And if I can't let you be anything?" Something painful flickered across his face. "Then I'll take what I can get. But I'm not walking away from him, Lena. You need to understand that. You can hate me. You can leave again if that's what you choose. But I know my son exists now, and that changes everything." "You're a dangerous man." "I was," Victor corrected. Past tense. Lena almost laughed. "You don't just stop being what you are." "No, but you change the shape of it. You find new purposes." He stepped back, giving her space. "I've been dismantling the old business for 8 months now, selling off assets, cutting ties, going legitimate. It's almost done." She stared at him. "You're lying." "I'm not. Why would you do that?" Victor's eyes locked on hers, and the intensity there made her breath catch. "Because I knew you'd come back eventually," he said, And when you did, I wanted to be someone you could stay with." The words hung in the air between them. Lena's throat tightened. "You didn't know about Owen." "No, but I knew about you. I knew you left because of what I was. And I knew that if I wanted any chance of fixing that, I had to change." He paused. "Finding out about him just gave me a better reason." Owen started to fuss, and Lena bounced him automatically, her mind racing. "I need proof," she said. "Of what?" "That you're really out. That you're not just saying this to keep me here." Victor nodded slowly. "Okay. What do you want to see?" "Everything. Financial records, business holdings, who you're meeting with, what you're doing. If we're doing this together, if I'm even considering staying, I need transparency." "You'll have it?" Victor didn't hesitate. "Starting tomorrow, I'll show you everything. You can ask any question you want. I'll answer honestly." Lena searched his face for the lie, for the manipulation, for the angle he was working. But all she saw was exhaustion and determination and something that looked almost like hope. "1 month," she heard herself say. Victor's eyebrows rose. "What?" "1 month trial. You prove you're out of that life. You prove you're serious about this. And you prove you can be the kind of father Owen deserves. No secrets, no lies, complete honesty. And after the month, we reevaluate. Together." Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. "Deal," he said. Lena shifted Owen to one arm and shook Victor's hand. His grip was warm and solid and achingly familiar. "But the first time you lie to me," she said, "the first time I find out you're still connected to anything violent or illegal, we're gone. And you won't find us again." Victor's hand tightened on hers just slightly. "Understood." He let go, and Lena immediately felt the absence of his touch. "The nursery's done," Victor said, his voice carefully neutral. "Want to see it?" Despite everything, despite her fear and her anger and her bone-deep exhaustion, Lena felt a flicker of curiosity. "Okay," she said. Victor led her back upstairs and down the hall to a room she hadn't noticed before. He opened the door, and Lena's breath caught for the second time that day. The nursery was perfect. Soft gray walls, white furniture, a crib with a mobile hanging above it, shelves stocked with diapers and wipes and more supplies than Owen would use in 6 months. A rocking chair by the window, blackout curtains, a changing table already set up with everything organized in labeled bins. "Caroline helped design it," Victor said. "I told her to get whatever was safest and best." Money wasn't a concern. Lena walked in slowly, running her hand along the crib rail. It was solid wood, smooth under her fingers. The mattress was firm. The sheets were soft cotton. Owen could sleep here. Owen could be safe here. "It's too much," she whispered. "It's what he deserves." Lena turned to face Victor. He was standing in the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. "I told you." "No, not the surface answer, the real one." Victor was quiet for a long time. Then he stepped into the nursery and closed the door behind him, like he needed the privacy even though they were alone in the house. "Because I loved you," he said finally. "And because when you left, I understood why, even if it destroyed me. You saw what I was and you ran, and I couldn't blame you for that. But I also couldn't let you go, so I started changing. Not because I thought I'd find you, I had people looking, but you'd vanished completely. But because I thought maybe if I became someone different, someone better, then someday if our paths crossed again, you wouldn't have to run." He looked down at Owen, sleeping in Lena's arms. "And then you texted me about our son, and I realized I'd been changing for the wrong reason. It wasn't about getting you back. It was about being the kind of man who deserved to be in his life. In both your lives." Lena's eyes burned. "You broke my heart." "I know. You were building something evil, and you expected me to live in the center of it like it was normal." "I know that too. So how am I supposed to trust that you've changed? How am I supposed to believe this isn't just another manipulation?" Victor met her eyes. "You're not. Not yet. That's what the month is for. I'm going to prove it to you day by day, decision by decision, and at the end you'll either believe me or you won't. But I'm going to try, Lena. For him. For you. For myself." Owen stirred in her arms and made a small sound. Both of them looked down at him. "He's beautiful," Victor said softly. "He is. Thank you for keeping him safe." The words almost broke her. Lena blinked hard against tears. "I didn't do a very good job of it," she managed. "You did the best you could alone. You don't have to be alone anymore." Lena wanted to argue. She wanted to protect herself, to keep her walls up, to remember all the reasons she'd run in the first place. But she was tired. So tired. And Owen was warm and fed and safe, and for the first time in months, she wasn't carrying everything by herself. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? 1 month. We'll try." Victor's entire body seemed to relax. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You have a lot to prove." "I know." He moved toward the door. "Get some rest, both of you. I'll wake you for his next feeding." "Victor?" He turned back. "What happens if this doesn't work?" Lena asked. "What happens if at the end of the month I still can't trust you?" Victor's expression was achingly honest. "Then I'll help you find a safe place to live, and I'll set up support for Owen, and I'll be the best father I can be from whatever distance you allow. But I won't disappear. He's my son. I won't abandon him the way—" He cut himself off. "The way your father abandoned you," Lena finished quietly. Victor's jaw tightened. Yes, she'd known about his childhood. Not much. Victor didn't talk about his past, but enough to understand that he'd grown up without a father, that his mother had struggled, that he'd built his empire out of desperation and anger and a need to never be powerless again. Owen would not grow up like that. No matter what happened between her and Victor, she could see that he meant that promise. "Okay," she said again. 1 month. Victor nodded and left the room, closing the door softly behind him. Lena stood in the perfect nursery, holding her son, and wondered if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst. The first 3 days passed in a blur of feedings and diaper changes and moments so surreal that Lena kept expecting to wake up back in her freezing apartment. But she didn't wake up. This was real. The soft sheets, the warm room, the endless supply of everything Owen needed. It was all real. And so was Victor, who appeared at every feeding like clockwork, watching Caroline demonstrate techniques with the focused intensity he used to reserve for business deals. On the morning of the 4th day, Lena found him in the nursery at 6 a.m., changing Owen's diaper with the kind of precision that would have been funny if it wasn't so touching. "You're getting faster," she said from the doorway. Victor looked up, and something in his expression softened when he saw her. "Caroline says I need to work on my swaddling technique. Apparently I'm wrapping him too tight." "You're doing fine." "He screamed for 10 minutes last night." "He's a baby. That's what they do." Lena walked in and picked up Owen once Victor had him dressed. The baby immediately settled against her chest, and she felt that familiar rush of love and terror that came with motherhood. "You don't have to be perfect at this." "Yes, I do." Victor washed his hands at the small sink Caroline had insisted be installed in the nursery. "I have 2 months to make up for. I can't afford mistakes." Lena sat down in the rocking chair, adjusting Owen in her arms. "That's not how this works. You're learning. He doesn't know the difference." Victor dried his hands and turned to face her. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair still messy from sleep, and Lena had to actively ignore how much she'd missed seeing him like this. Unguarded, human, real. "I want to show you something today," he said. Her guard went up immediately. "Show me what?" "The proof you asked for, that I'm out." Victor leaned against the changing table. "I've been putting together documentation all week. Financial records, legal contracts, everything. It's ready." Lena's stomach tightened. Part of her didn't want to know. Part of her wanted to stay in this bubble where she could pretend Victor was just a man helping her, not a former crime boss trying to prove he'd changed. But she'd made a deal. 1 month of complete honesty. "Okay," she said. "When?" "After Owen's morning nap. Caroline will watch him. We'll go to my office." "Here?" "Downstairs. I had it built when I bought the place." Victor's eyes stayed on hers. "Everything I'm going to show you, it's not pretty, Lena. You're going to see exactly what I was, what I built, what I destroyed on my way out. I need you to be prepared for that." "I know what you were." You know some of it. You don't know all of it. The weight in his voice made her chest tight. Will it change how I see you? Victor's smile was sad. Probably. But you deserve the truth. That was the deal. Owen started to fuss, and Lena stood to walk him, bouncing gently the way that always calmed him. Victor watched them for a moment, and she could see him cataloging the movement, learning. I'll make breakfast, he said finally. Come down when you're ready. He left, and Lena was alone with Owen and her thoughts. The truth. She was about to learn the full scope of what Victor had been, and some part of her was terrified that seeing it laid out in black and white would make it impossible to stay, would make the last 4 days feel like a beautiful lie before the inevitable collapse. But she'd asked for this. She'd demanded transparency. Now she had to follow through. 3 hours later, Lena followed Victor down a hallway she hadn't explored yet. It led to a door that required a fingerprint scan to open. Victor pressed his thumb to the panel and the lock clicked. The office inside was nothing like the rest of the house. Where everything else was light and modern, this room was all dark wood and leather. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 2 walls. A massive desk sat in front of windows that overlooked the city, and on the desk, several thick folders waited. Sit, Victor said, gesturing to one of the chairs across from his desk. Lena sat. Her heart was hammering. Victor took the chair beside her instead of behind the desk. A deliberate choice, she realized. He wasn't positioning himself as the authority here. He was sitting with her as an equal. He pulled the first folder over and opened it. This is everything, he said quietly. 6 years of building an empire and 8 months of tearing it down. I'm going to walk you through all of it, and you can ask any question you want. But before I start, I need you to understand something. Lena looked at him. I'm not going to make excuses, Victor continued. I'm not going to justify what I did or try to explain it away. I made choices, bad choices, choices that hurt people, and I'm going to own all of it, okay? Okay, Lena whispered. Victor took a breath and started talking. He told her about the beginning, how he'd started with protection rackets in his 20s, leveraging his reputation for violence into profit, how he'd expanded into gambling, then smuggling, then money laundering, how the empire had grown faster than he could control, pulling him deeper into a world where power meant everything and mercy was weakness. He showed her financial records that detailed transactions she could barely comprehend, millions of dollars moving through shell companies, offshore accounts, businesses that existed only on paper. He explained each one with the detached efficiency of a professor teaching a class, never flinching from the ugliest parts. Then he showed her the cost. This is Marco DeLuca, Victor said, sliding a photograph across the desk. It showed a man in his 40s with graying hair. He worked for me for 3 years. Good man. Loyal. He got caught skimming money to pay for his daughter's cancer treatment. Lena's stomach dropped. What happened to him? I had him beaten as an example to the others. Broke his jaw, 3 ribs, and his left arm. Victor's voice was flat. He couldn't work for 6 months. His daughter died while he was recovering because he couldn't afford the treatments. Victor, I need you to hear this. His eyes were hard. I need you to know exactly who you're dealing with. Marco wasn't the only one. There were others. People who crossed me, people who failed me, people who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I hurt them. Sometimes I did it myself. Sometimes I gave the order. But I'm responsible for all of it. Lena felt sick. She'd known Victor was dangerous. She'd known he'd done terrible things. But hearing the specifics, seeing the evidence laid out in front of her, made it real in a way that abstract knowledge never had. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because you need to make an informed choice. You need to decide if you can trust a man who did these things, even if he's trying to change. Victor pushed another folder toward her. This is what I've done to get out. Every business I've sold, every connection I've severed, every debt I've paid to make sure no one has leverage over me anymore. It took 8 months and cost me almost everything I'd built. Lena opened the folder. Inside were contracts, wire transfers, legal documents. She didn't understand most of it, but she could see the pattern, systematic dismantling of an empire. The last piece closes next week, Victor said. A warehouse operation on the east side. Once that's sold, I'm completely clean. Legitimate income only. Investments, real estate, a security consulting firm that actually does security consulting instead of being a front. Security consulting? Lena looked up. Turns out people will pay a lot of money for someone who knows how criminals think. Victor's smile was bitter. I'm using what I learned in that world to help people protect themselves from it. It's not redemption. But it's something. Lena stared at the documents in front of her. The evidence of Victor's past was overwhelming, but so was the evidence of his effort to change. What about the people you hurt? She asked. Marco and the others, what happens to them? Victor pulled out another folder, thinner than the rest. I've been trying to make amends where I can. Marco got an anonymous donation that covered his medical bills and then some. I can't bring his daughter back, but I could at least make sure he didn't lose everything. Others got similar help, enough to rebuild, to start over. Some refused to take it. I don't blame them. They don't know it came from you? No, and they never will. I'm not doing it for forgiveness. I'm doing it because it's right. Victor closed the folder. There are some people I can't make amends to. People who died because of decisions I made. All I can do is try to be better going forward. Lena's hands were shaking. She folded them in her lap and tried to process everything she'd just learned. I need a minute, she said. Take your time. She stood and walked to the window. The city sprawled below, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere out there were people whose lives Victor had destroyed. Somewhere out there were families who would never be whole again because of choices he'd made. But up here, in this house, was a man trying desperately to be different. A man learning to change diapers and make bottles and be a father to a son he hadn't known existed. Could those two versions of Victor coexist? Could someone who'd done such terrible things really become someone safe? Lena, Victor said quietly behind her. If you want to leave, I'll help you. I meant what I said. Owen deserves a father, but he also deserves a mother who feels safe. If you can't feel safe here, we'll find another way. Lena turned to face him. Do you still have connections to that world? People who could come after you? After us? No. That's why it took 8 months to get out. I had to close every door, settle every debt, make sure no one had a reason to come looking. The people who knew me then think I retired, moved abroad. The few who know I'm still in the city know I'm not in the game anymore. Victor stood up. But I won't lie to you, there's always a risk when you've lived the life I lived. Someone could show up looking for revenge. Someone could try to pull me back in. I've done everything I can to prevent that, but I can't guarantee it will never happen. That's not very reassuring. No, but it's honest. Victor moved closer but stopped a few feet away, giving her space. This house has security that rivals most government buildings. I have people watching for threats. If anyone from my past shows up, we'll know about it before they get close. I'm doing everything I can to keep you both safe. Lena studied his face. You really love him, don't you? Owen? Yes. No hesitation. From the second I saw him. I didn't know I could feel like that. And me? The question hung between them. Victor's expression shifted into something raw. You know the answer to that. Say it anyway. I love you, Lena. I never stopped. Even when I thought I'd never see you again, even when I was tearing down everything I'd built, you were the reason. The hope that maybe someday I could be someone you'd come back to. He took a breath. But I also know love isn't enough. I know I have to earn your trust. That's what this month is about. Lena's chest ached. I don't know if I can love you again. I know. I don't know if I can forgive what you were. I wouldn't ask you to. Then what are you asking for? Victor's eyes held hers. A chance. Just a chance to prove I can be the man you and Owen need. That's all. Lena looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes from nights spent learning how to care for an infant. She saw the determination in the set of his jaw. She saw the hope he was trying not to show her because he didn't want to pressure her into anything. And underneath all of it, she saw the man she'd fallen in love with 4 years ago, the one who'd made her laugh, who'd protected her, who'd made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. That man had been real. He'd just also been a criminal. Okay, she said finally. Okay? I'm staying for the rest of the month, like we agreed, but Victor... She moved closer. If I find out you lied about any of this, if I find out there's still something you're hiding, we're done. Completely. Do you understand? I understand. And I need you to understand something too. I'm not here because I love you. I'm here because Owen needs stability and safety. And right now, you're offering that. Don't confuse those things. Something flickered across Victor's face. Pain, maybe, or disappointment, but he nodded. I won't. Good. Lena turned toward the door. I should check on him. Caroline's probably ready for a break. Lena, wait. She turned back. Victor was still standing by the desk, and he looked like he wanted to say something important. But after a moment, he just shook his head. Thank you, he said instead, for staying, for giving me this chance. Lena nodded and left the office, her mind spinning. She'd seen the proof. She'd heard the truth. And against every instinct that told her to run, she was choosing to stay. The question now was whether that choice would save them or destroy them. That night, Lena woke to the sound of Owen crying. She checked her phone, 2:17 a.m. Right on schedule for his middle-of-the-night feeding. She dragged herself out of bed and padded across the hall to the nursery. But when she opened the door, she found Victor already there. He was sitting in the rocking chair, holding Owen, offering him a bottle in the dim glow of the nightlight. I've got him, Victor said quietly. Go back to sleep. Lena should have. She was exhausted. But something made her walk into the room and sit down on the ottoman near the chair. Can't sleep anyway, she said. They sat in comfortable silence while Owen drank his bottle. The house was quiet around them, and the moment felt strangely intimate, just the three of them in this small room in the middle of the night. He likes you, Lena said after a while. Victor looked down at Owen. You think so? I know so. He settles faster when you hold him now. He recognizes your voice. Caroline says babies can sense tension. I've been trying to stay calm around him. You're doing more than that. You're being present. That matters more than technique. Lena pulled her knees up to her chest. My father wasn't around much when I was growing up. He worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat after my mom left. I know he loved me, but I barely saw him. I always told myself if I had kids, they'd have a parent who was actually there. Is that why you didn't tell me? Victor asked. Because you thought I'd be like that? No, I thought you'd be there too much, that you'd suffocate us with protection and control and all the things that came with your world. I thought Owen would grow up surrounded by violence and fear, and I couldn't. Her voice cracked. I couldn't let that happen to him. Victor was quiet for a long moment. Owen had finished his bottle, and Victor lifted him to his shoulder, patting his back gently. I would have, he said finally. If you told me then, 2 years ago, before I started changing, I would have done exactly what you feared. I would have locked you both away somewhere I thought was safe and controlled every aspect of your lives. I would have convinced myself it was protection, but it would have been a prison. Lena's throat tightened. And now? Now I understand that's not safety. That's not love. Real protection means giving you both the freedom to choose and making sure you have everything you need to make those choices from a position of strength. Victor looked at her over Owen's head. That's why I'm showing you everything. That's why I'm not making demands. I'm trying to give you power instead of taking it away. Owen burped, and a small smile crossed Victor's face. He lowered the baby back into his arms and stood, moving to the crib. He laid Owen down with a gentleness that made Lena's chest ache, then covered him with a soft blanket. They both stood there for a moment, watching their son settle into sleep. He's perfect, Victor whispered. He really is. Victor turned to face her in the dim light. They were standing close, closer than they'd been since she arrived. Lena could smell his cologne again, could see the shadow of stubble on his jaw, could remember exactly what it had felt like to kiss him. I should go, she said, but she didn't move. Lena, don't. She took a step back. Don't make this harder than it already is. I wasn't going to. Victor's hands flexed at his sides like he wanted to reach for her, but wouldn't let himself. I was just going to say you're a good mother. Owen's lucky to have you. The unexpected compliment hit her harder than any declaration of love would have. Thank you, she managed. She left the nursery before she could do something stupid like cry or close the distance between them, or admit that she was starting to see glimpses of the man she'd loved underneath the monster she'd been running from. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm. Victor proved himself in small, consistent ways. He showed up for every feeding, learned to soothe Owen when he was fussy, took the night shifts so Lena could sleep. He asked Caroline questions constantly, taking notes like he was studying for an exam. He researched developmental milestones and bought books about infant care that he read cover to cover, and he kept his promise about transparency. Every evening after Owen went to bed, Victor would give Lena updates on his business dealings. He showed her contracts before he signed them. He explained his schedule and where he'd been during the day. He introduced her to his lawyer, his accountant, and the few legitimate business partners he was building relationships with. It was exhausting and overwhelming, and exactly what she'd asked for. Lena found herself relaxing incrementally. The tight ball of anxiety in her chest loosened a little more each day. She started sleeping through the nights Victor took Owen. She started eating the meals Victor's chef prepared without checking for ulterior motives. She started believing, against all logic, that this might actually work. On the 17th day, Victor asked her to take a walk with him. "Caroline can watch Owen for an hour," he said. "I want to show you something." They walked through the estate gardens, bare and winter-dead, but still beautiful in their architecture. Victor led her to a greenhouse she hadn't noticed before. Inside, it was warm and green and alive. Plants grew in careful rows, and the air smelled like earth and growth. "I started this 3 months ago," Victor said. "After everything else was done, I needed something to do with my hands. Something that built instead of destroyed." Lena walked between the rows, trailing her fingers across leaves. "It's beautiful. It's therapy." Victor stopped beside a row of seedlings. "Every morning I come out here and take care of these plants. Water them, check for disease, remove dead growth. It reminds me that change is possible, that you can take something dormant and help it grow into something new." Lena looked at him. "Is that what you think you're doing? Growing into something new?" "I'm trying." Victor crouched down to adjust one of the seedlings. "I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if I can ever be truly clean of what I was, but I know I'm different than I was 2 years ago. I have to believe that matters." "It does matter." The words came out before Lena could stop them. "I've been watching you, Victor, with Owen, with me, with everything, and I can see you're trying. I can see you're different." Victor stood slowly. "Different enough?" "I don't know yet." Lena wrapped her arms around herself. "That's the honest answer. I don't know if what you're building here is real or if it's just another beautiful cage. I don't know if I can separate the man you were from the man you're trying to be, but I'm starting to want to believe it's possible." "That's more than I hoped for," Victor said quietly. They stood in the greenhouse surrounded by growing things, and Lena felt the first crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. It terrified her. That night, Lena was giving Owen a bath when Victor appeared in the doorway. "There's someone here to see you," he said. Her hands froze in the water. "Who?" "Your former landlord. He's at the gate asking to speak with you about the back rent." Ice flooded Lena's veins. She'd almost forgotten about that life. The apartment, the overdue bills, the constant pressure. It felt like years ago instead of weeks. "Tell him I'll pay him," she said. "I just need time." "Already handled." Victor leaned against the doorframe. "I paid your back rent this morning, along with a penalty for breaking the lease. You're clear." Lena stared at him. "You can't just do that." "I can, and I did. He showed up looking for money or looking to cause trouble. Either way, I wasn't going to let him harass you. That was my responsibility." "You're the mother of my child. Your responsibilities are my responsibilities now." Victor's tone was matter of fact. "He's gone. You don't have to think about that place anymore." Lena should have been angry. She should have hated that he'd handled her problems without asking. But all she felt was relief so profound it made her lightheaded. "Thank you," she whispered. Victor's expression softened. "You're welcome." He left, and Lena finished bathing Owen with shaking hands. Another piece of her old life closed. Another reason to stay in this new one. The cracks in her wall were spreading. On the 23rd day, Lena made a decision. She found Victor in his office, working at his computer. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression shifted when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. Nothing's wrong. Lena took a breath. I want to show you something. She pulled out her phone and opened her photos. Then she handed it to Victor. He looked down at the screen and his entire body went still. It was a photo from the hospital, taken hours after Owen was born. Lena looked exhausted and terrified and overwhelmed, holding a tiny red-faced baby against her chest. I took this right after they cleaned him up, Lena said quietly. I was alone. No family, no friends, no one to call, just me and him. And I remember thinking that I'd made a terrible mistake, that I should have told you, that I was going to fail him because I didn't know what I was doing. Victor's thumb moved across the screen, enlarging the photo. His eyes were locked on Owen's newborn face. You should have been there, Lena continued. I robbed you of that moment, and I robbed Owen of having his father from the very beginning. And I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting him, but I was really just protecting myself from having to trust you. Victor looked up, and his eyes were bright. Lena, I'm not saying I'm ready to forgive everything. I'm not saying we're going to be together, but I'm saying I was wrong to keep him from you. You deserve to know. And I'm sorry. Victor set the phone down carefully and stood. For a moment, Lena thought he might close the distance between them, might pull her into his arms the way he used to, but he just stood there, looking at her like she'd given him something precious. Thank you, he said roughly. That means more than you know. Can I ask you something? Anything. If I had told you about Owen from the beginning, what would you have done? Really? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, 2 years ago, I would have locked you both away somewhere I thought was safe. I would have convinced myself I was protecting you, but really I would have been controlling you, and eventually you would have hated me for it. And now? Now I would have asked what you needed and tried to provide it while respecting your choices. But I don't know if I could have done that then. I wasn't ready to be a father. I wasn't ready to be a partner. I was still trying to build an empire instead of a life. Lena nodded slowly. So maybe the timing worked out the way it needed to. Maybe, Victor's smile was sad, or maybe we just lost 18 months we can't get back. But we have now. We have the future. That has to be enough. The wall around Lena's heart cracked a little wider. That night she lay in bed staring at the ceiling and admitted something she'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. She was falling for Victor again. Not the Victor she'd left. The new one. The one who woke up at 2 a.m. to feed his son without complaint. The one who showed her his worst moments with unflinching honesty. The one who was building greenhouses and legitimate businesses and trying desperately to be worthy of a family he'd just discovered. It terrified her. Because what if it was an act? What if he reverted the moment she let her guard down? What if she let herself love him and he destroyed her all over again? But what if he didn't? What if this was real? Lena rolled over and pulled her pillow close. 7 more days until the end of their month. 7 more days to decide if she could take the leap. 7 more days to figure out if Victor Moretti had really changed or if she was just seeing what she wanted to see. Either way, the choice was coming, and this time it would determine the rest of their lives. The morning of the 24th day, Lena woke to silence. That alone was unusual. Owen typically started fussing around 6, his internal clock more reliable than any alarm, but her phone showed 7:43 a.m., and the nursery across the hall was quiet. She got up quickly, heart hammering with the irrational panic that all new mothers knew, and hurried across the hallway. But when she pushed open the nursery door, she found Victor sitting in the rocking chair with Owen asleep against his chest. Both of them were still, peaceful, and Victor's eyes were closed. Lena's breath caught. She stood there watching them, this man and this baby, and felt something shift irrevocably in her chest. Victor's hand was spread across Owen's back, protective and gentle. His face was relaxed in sleep, younger somehow, and she could see exactly what he must have looked like as a boy before the world had hardened him into something dangerous. As if sensing her presence, Victor's eyes opened. He looked at her without moving, careful not to disturb Owen. "Morning," he whispered. "How long have you been up?" "Since 5. He was restless. Figured I'd let you sleep." Lena walked in quietly and sat on the ottoman. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." Victor looked down at Owen. "I like this. being the one he needs when he wakes up. It feels like I'm making up for lost time, even though I know I can't really do that. You're here now, that's what matters. They sat in the early morning quiet, and Lena felt the weight of the week ahead pressing down on her. 6 more days until their month was up. 6 more days until she had to make her choice. Victor, she said softly, can I ask you something? Always. What happens at the end of the week, after the month is over? Victor's arms tightened slightly around Owen. That depends on you. But what do you want to happen? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. I want you to stay. Both of you. Not because you're scared or desperate or because you think you owe me something, but because you choose to. Because you believe I can be the man you need, the father Owen needs. Because you want to build a life here. And if I'm not ready for that, then we figure out the next step together. I find you a safe place, I set up support, and I stay in Owen's life as much as you'll allow. But Lena, his voice dropped lower, I need you to know that my door will always be open. If you leave and change your mind in a week, a month, a year, I'll be here, waiting. Lena's throat tightened. That's not fair to you. I don't care about fair. I care about you, about him, about having the chance to be part of your lives in whatever capacity you'll allow. Victor shifted Owen carefully in his arms. I've spent the last 3 weeks trying to prove I've changed, and I think I have. But the final proof is this. I'm willing to let you go if that's what's best for you, even though it would destroy me. Because real love means wanting your happiness more than my own. Lena felt tears burn her eyes. You're making this really hard. Good. It should be hard. This is the rest of our lives we're deciding. Owen stirred and made a small sound. Victor stood smoothly and carried him to the changing table, and Lena watched as he efficiently changed the diaper with the practiced ease he'd developed over the past weeks. When he was done, he offered Owen to her. Your turn to feed him, Victor said. I'll make breakfast. He left the nursery and Lena settled into the rocking chair with her son. Owen latched onto the bottle immediately, his dark eyes, so much like his father's, staring up at her with that intense baby focus that always made her smile. What do you think? She whispered to him. Should we stay? Should we trust him? Owen just kept drinking, oblivious to the magnitude of the decision weighing on her. Lena closed her eyes and tried to imagine walking away, packing up their things, finding a new apartment, starting over alone. Victor would help, she knew. He'd make sure she had everything she needed. But Owen would grow up split between 2 homes, 2 lives, never quite whole. Then she tried to imagine staying, letting herself believe in this new version of Victor, building a family in this beautiful house with a man who'd once terrified her but now made her feel safer than she'd ever felt before. Both futures were terrifying in different ways. The question was which fear she could live with. 3 days before the month ended, Victor's final business deal closed. Lena knew because he came to find her in the nursery where she was folding Owen's laundry, and his face was different somehow. Lighter. It's done, he said from the doorway. She looked up. The warehouse? Sold. Paper signed, money transferred. I'm officially out. Victor leaned against the door frame, and she could see the tension leaving his shoulders. 6 years of building something toxic, 8 months of dismantling it, and it's finally over. Lena set down the tiny shirt she was folding. How do you feel? Terrified, relieved, free. He laughed, but it sounded shaky. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. That life was all I knew for so long. Now you figure out who you are without it. That's the terrifying part. Victor walked into the nursery and picked up one of Owen's onesies, studying it like he'd never seen baby clothes before. What if I'm nothing without that world? What if I spent so much time being dangerous that I don't know how to be anything else? Lena stood and moved closer to him. You're already something else. You're a father. You're Owen's whole world right now. That's not nothing. Victor looked at her, and something in his expression was raw and uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. What if I fail at that too? You won't. You can't know that. Yes, I can. Lena took the onesie from his hands and set it on the changing table. Because I've watched you for 3 weeks. I've seen you learn and grow and show up for him even when you're exhausted or scared or unsure. You're not failing, Victor. You're becoming exactly the father he needs. And what about what you need? The question hung between them. Lena took a breath. I need honesty. I need consistency. I need to know that the man standing in front of me right now is the man who'll still be here in a year, 5 years, 20 years. I need to trust that you won't revert to who you were the moment things get hard. I can promise you that. I know promises don't mean much coming from me, but I swear to you, Lena, I'm not going back to that life. I can't, not after knowing what this feels like. What does this feel like? Victor's eyes searched hers. Like I finally understand what I was supposed to be building all along. Not an empire, a home, a family, something real. Lena's heart was hammering. They were standing so close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough to remember exactly how it felt to kiss him. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? Of believing you. Of letting myself hope that this is real and then having it fall apart. Of Owen getting hurt if I make the wrong choice. Victor's hand came up slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. I can't promise you that I won't make mistakes, he said quietly. I can't promise that I'll always know the right thing to do or say. But I can promise that I will never stop trying to be worthy of you both. And I can promise that if you give me this chance, I will spend every single day proving that your trust wasn't misplaced. Lena closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite every self-protective instinct screaming at her to pull away. 2 more days, she whispered. Give me 2 more days to think. Victor's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Take all the time you need. He dropped his hand and stepped back, and Lena immediately felt the loss of his warmth. I'm going to the greenhouse for a while, Victor said. Clear my head. Text me if Owen needs anything. He left, and Lena sank into the rocking chair, her hands shaking. She was going to stay. She knew it with a certainty that terrified her. Despite all her fears, despite all the logical reasons to run, she was going to choose Victor. Choose this life, choose to believe that people could change, and that love could survive even the worst betrayals. The question now was whether she could admit it to him before fear made her bolt. That evening, Caroline found Lena in the kitchen, staring blankly at the refrigerator. Everything all right, dear? The older woman asked. Lena turned. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think people can really change, like fundamentally at their core? Caroline studied her for a moment, then gestured to the kitchen table. Sit. I'll make tea. They sat together while the kettle heated, and Caroline folded her hands on the table. I've been a nanny for 30 years, she said. I've worked for all kinds of families, rich ones, poor ones, happy ones, broken ones. And I've learned that people are capable of remarkable transformation when they have the right motivation. What's the right motivation? Love. Real love, not the selfish kind. The kind that makes you want to be better because someone else deserves better. Caroline poured hot water over tea bags. When Mr. Moretti called me 3 weeks ago, I almost said no. I'd heard things about him, rumors, enough to make me nervous about working in his home. Lena's stomach tightened. What changed your mind? The desperation in his voice. He wasn't calling because he needed help with a baby. He was calling because he was terrified of failing someone he loved. That kind of fear, the fear of not being enough, that's what drives real change. Caroline pushed a mug toward Lena. I've watched him with your son. He's not playing at being a father. He's not doing it for show. That man adores that baby with every fiber of his being. I know he does. And he adores you too, even if you're not ready to hear it. Caroline's smile was knowing. The way he looks at you when you're not watching, the way he asks me questions about what you need, how you're feeling, if you seem happy. That's not manipulation. That's a man desperately in love and terrified he's already lost you. Lena wrapped her hands around the warm mug. What if I'm making a mistake? What if he goes back to who he was? Then you deal with it when it happens. But Lena, you can't live your life protecting yourself from possibilities. At some point, you have to take a leap of faith. Caroline reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I've seen a lot of fathers over the years, good ones, bad ones, absent ones. Mr. Moretti is trying harder than any of them to get it right. That has to count for something. It does, Lena whispered. It counts for everything. The next day, Lena asked Victor to take a walk with her after Owen's morning nap. They left the baby with Caroline and walked through the winter bare gardens toward the greenhouse. I've been thinking about what you said, Lena began, about wanting us to stay. Victor's hands were shoved in his pockets, his shoulders tense. And? I need to tell you something first, about why I really left. They reached the greenhouse, and Victor held the door open for her. Inside, the air was warm and green and alive, and Lena felt like she could breathe for the first time all day. When we were together before, she said, I loved you, completely, recklessly. The kind of love that made me ignore warning signs and excuse things I shouldn't have excused. I knew what you did. I knew it was dangerous, but I loved you anyway. Victor was quiet, watching her. Then I got pregnant, and everything shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't about what I could survive or tolerate. It was about bringing a baby into a world where violence could touch him at any moment. Lena touched one of the seedlings, feeling the delicate leaves. I realized I had to choose between loving you and protecting him. And that choice broke me, Victor. It absolutely destroyed me. But I chose him. I know. Do you? Do you understand that leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done? That I cried for months? That I still loved you even when I hated what you were? Lena's voice cracked. I need you to understand that I didn't run because it was easy. I ran because it was the only way I could keep our son safe from a world I couldn't control. Victor moved closer. I do understand, and I'm sorry you had to make that choice alone. I'm sorry I was the kind of man who made that choice necessary. You were, Lena agreed, but you're not anymore. That's what these 3 weeks have shown me. You're not that man. You're someone new, someone better. And I think, she took a shaky breath, I think I'm ready to believe in that. Victor went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to stay, not just for the stability or the safety or because it's convenient. I want to stay because I can see us building something real here, the three of us. A family. Lena turned to face him fully. But I need you to understand my conditions. Anything. First, complete transparency continues. Forever. No secrets, no half-truths, no protecting me from things you think I can't handle. If something from your past shows up, you tell me immediately. Done. Second, Owen comes first. Always. Every decision we make has to be about what's best for him, not what's easiest for us. I wouldn't have it any other way. Third, this was the hard one. We take this slow. I'm staying, and I'm choosing to trust you, but I'm not ready to jump back into a relationship. We're partners in raising Owen. We're friends, hopefully. But anything more than that has to develop naturally, without pressure. Victor's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I can do that. Can you? Really? Because I need you to understand that I might never be ready for more. I might decide that co-parenting is all I can offer you, and you need to be okay with that. The silence stretched long enough to be painful. Victor looked out at his plants, his hands still in his pockets, and Lena watched him wrestle with what she was asking. I won't lie and say that's what I want, he said finally. I want everything with you. I want us to be a family in every sense of the word. But I also know that you get to decide what you're ready for and when. So yes, I can do slow. I can do friends and co-parents and whatever else you're willing to give me. Because having you here, in whatever capacity, is better than not having you at all. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Okay then. Okay? We're staying. All the conditions apply, and you agree to them, so we're staying. Victor's entire face transformed. The careful control he'd maintained for 3 weeks cracked, and pure relief flooded through. You mean it? I mean it. He closed the distance between them in 2 steps and pulled her into his arms. Lena stiffened for just a second before melting into the embrace. He held her like she was something precious and fragile, his face buried in her hair, and she could feel him shaking. Thank you, he whispered roughly. Thank you for trusting me, for giving me this chance. I swear I won't waste it. Lena's arms came up around him, and she let herself have this moment. let herself feel safe in his arms, let herself believe that maybe this could work. When they finally pulled apart, Victor's eyes were bright. "I have something for you," he said. "I was going to wait, but now feels right." He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Lena's heart stopped. "It's not what you think," Victor added quickly, seeing her face. "I know we're taking things slow. This isn't a ring." He opened the box. Inside were 2 keys on a simple key ring. "One is to the house," Victor said. "The other is to the estate gate, so you can come and go as you please, so you never feel trapped here." Lena stared at the keys. Such a simple gesture, but it meant everything. Freedom, choice, trust. "Thank you," she whispered, taking them. "There's something else." Victor pulled out his phone and opened it to a document. "I had my lawyer draw this up. It's a trust fund for Owen, enough to make sure he's taken care of for life, no matter what happens between us. And it's in your name, too, as the trustee. You control it, not me." Lena's hands were shaking as she looked at the numbers. It was more money than she could comprehend. "Victor, this is insurance for both of you, so you never have to worry about stability or safety again. So even if I fail at everything else, I know I did this one thing right. You're not going to fail. Maybe not, but I want you to have this anyway. You and Owen deserve security that doesn't depend on me being perfect." Lena closed the document and handed his phone back. Then she took his face in her hands and pulled him down so she could press her forehead to his. "You're already more than I hoped for," she said quietly. "You know that, right? You've exceeded every expectation. You've shown up in ways I didn't think were possible. So stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and just be here with us. That's all we need." Victor's arms came around her waist. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." They stood like that in the greenhouse, surrounded by growing things and new beginnings, and Lena felt the last of her walls crumble. She was all in, terrified, hopeful, and completely committed. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. That night, they told Caroline over dinner. The older woman smiled like she'd known all along and immediately started making plans for how to adjust Owen's schedule now that Lena and Victor would be sharing parenting duties more equally. After Caroline left, Lena and Victor settled on the couch with Owen between them. The baby was awake and alert, staring at the ceiling fan like it held the secrets of the universe. "I was thinking," Victor said carefully, "maybe we should set up a room for you to work in. You mentioned wanting to go back to graphic design eventually. You could freelance from home, set your own hours." Lena looked at him. "You've been thinking about my career?" "I've been thinking about everything. What you need to be happy. What you need to feel fulfilled beyond being Owen's mother." He reached over and adjusted Owen's blanket. "I don't want you to feel like staying here means giving up your identity. I want you to have space to be yourself." "That's very thoughtful." "I'm trying." Victor's smile was self-deprecating. "Caroline gave me about 15 books on partnership and healthy relationships. I'm working my way through them." Lena couldn't help but laugh. "You're reading relationship books?" "I told you I'd do whatever it takes. If that means learning from people who actually know what they're doing, then that's what I'll do." He met her eyes. "I messed up our first chance. I'm not messing up the second one." Owen chose that moment to let out a massive yawn, his tiny face scrunching up adorably. Both of them smiled. "He's ready for bed," Lena said. "I'll take him." Victor scooped Owen up carefully. "You relax. You've had a big day." Lena watched him carry their son upstairs, and her chest felt full to bursting. This was her life now, this house, this man, this family they were building from broken pieces. It wasn't perfect. There would be hard days ahead. There would be moments when doubt crept in, when old fears resurfaced, when they had to work through the damage of the past. But they had time now. They had trust. They had a chance. And for the first time since that desperate night when she'd sent a single text message, Lena allowed herself to believe it might be enough. Later, after Owen was asleep and the house was quiet, Lena found herself standing in the doorway of Victor's office. He was at his desk, working on something on his laptop, and he looked up when he sensed her presence. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Too much on my mind." She walked in and sat in the chair across from him. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Always." "Do you ever regret it? The life you left behind? The power? The money? All of it?" Victor closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. Honestly, sometimes. Not the violence or the fear or the blood, but the certainty of it. The clear hierarchy. The knowledge that I had control. He paused. This is scarier. Building something legitimate, being vulnerable, trusting that love is enough. There's no rule book for this. I can't strong-arm my way through fatherhood or partnership. I have to actually show up and be present and hope it's enough. It is enough, Lena said. More than enough. You say that now, but what about 6 months from now when I make a mistake? What about a year from now when Owen's teething and neither of us has slept and we're both exhausted? Then we deal with it together. That's what partnership means, right? You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present and honest and willing to work through the hard parts. Victor's expression softened. When did you get so wise? Around the same time I became a single mother and had to figure out how to survive on my own. Lena stood. We're going to be okay, Victor. All 3 of us. I really believe that. I hope you're right. I am. She moved toward the door, then paused. Thank you for today. For understanding what I needed. For giving me time. Thank you for staying. Lena smiled and left him to his work, but she felt lighter than she had in months. Maybe even years. The last day of their month arrived quietly. Lena woke to sun streaming through her window and Owen's soft babbling from the nursery. She got up and found Victor already in there, changing the baby's diaper while carrying on a one-sided conversation about the weather. It's supposed to rain this afternoon, Victor was saying seriously. But don't worry, we'll stay inside where it's warm. Maybe we'll read that new book Caroline brought, the one with the farm animals. Owen gurgled in response, and Victor grinned. I'm glad you agree. Very sophisticated literary choice for someone so young. Lena laughed from the doorway, and Victor looked up. Morning, he said. We were just discussing our agenda for the day. I heard. Very important meeting. Victor finished with the diaper and picked Owen up. The most important. He's a demanding boss. They went downstairs together, falling into the morning routine they'd established over the past weeks. Victor made coffee while Lena warmed Owen's bottle. They took turns feeding and burping the baby. They ate breakfast at the kitchen island, talking about nothing and everything. It felt domestic. Normal. Right. I was thinking, Victor said as he cleared their plates, maybe next week we could start interviewing pediatricians. Find one you're comfortable with for Owen's regular checkups. That's a good idea. I've been taking him to a clinic across town, but it would be easier to have someone closer. I'll have Caroline compile a list of the best ones in the area. We can visit a few, see who you like. Lena watched him load the dishwasher with meticulous care and felt a wave of affection so strong it startled her. This man who'd once terrified her was now discussing pediatricians and worrying about Owen's checkup schedule. The transformation was remarkable. Victor, she said softly. He turned. Yeah? I'm glad I texted you that night, even though I was terrified, even though I wasn't sure what would happen. I'm glad I took that chance. Victor set down the dish he was holding and came around the island to where she sat. He didn't touch her, respecting the boundaries she'd set, but he stood close enough that she could see the emotion in his eyes. So am I, he said. Best message I've ever received, even if it scared the hell out of me at the time. We've come a long way in a month. We have. And we have so much farther to go. Victor smiled. But I'm looking forward to it, every day of it. Owen started fussing, and Victor immediately moved to pick him up, swaying gently until the baby settled. Lena watched them together, her son and his father, and felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. They'd made it through the month. They'd faced the truth, confronted the past, and chosen to move forward together. It wasn't the ending she'd expected when she sent that desperate message at 4:47 a.m. 4 weeks ago. It was better. Because this wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning, the start of something new and fragile and worth fighting for. And for the first time in 2 years, Lena allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, broken things could be mended, that people could change, that love could survive even the darkest pasts, that her family, the one she'd tried so hard to protect by keeping it apart, was finally, impossibly, coming together. The weeks that followed their decision settled into a rhythm that felt almost too easy. Lena kept waiting for something to go wrong, for the other shoe to drop, for Victor to reveal that this had all been an elaborate performance. But the shoe never dropped. Victor remained consistent, present, and exactly who he'd promised to be. Owen was thriving. At 3 months old, he was filling out, his cheeks round and healthy, his eyes bright and alert. He'd started smiling, real smiles that lit up his whole face, and both Lena and Victor competed shamelessly for those precious expressions. Victor had even started a photo album, physical, not digital, that he updated religiously with pictures of Owen's milestones. "He's going to think we're ridiculous when he's older," Lena said one afternoon, watching Victor take his 14th photo of Owen experiencing tummy time. "I don't care, I missed the first 2 months. I'm documenting everything from here on out." Victor snapped another shot, then set his phone down and got on the floor beside Owen. "Come on, buddy, show me that head control Caroline's been bragging about." Owen lifted his head for approximately 3 seconds before face-planting back into the mat. "That's my boy," Victor said proudly, "already giving up when things get hard. Very on brand for this family." Lena threw a pillow at him. "Don't say that. He's perfect." "He is perfect. We, however, are disasters." Victor rolled onto his back and looked up at her. "Speaking of disasters, I got a call this morning." Lena's stomach tightened. "From who?" "My former business partner. Marco's brother, actually. He's heard I'm out, and he wants to meet." "Why?" "He says he wants closure, an explanation for why I helped Marco after what happened." Victor's jaw tightened. "I told him I'd think about it." "Do you want to meet with him?" "I don't know. Part of me thinks I owe him that conversation. Part of me thinks digging up the past is asking for trouble." Victor sat up and scooped Owen into his arms as the baby started to fuss. "What do you think?" The fact that he was asking her opinion, genuinely seeking her input on something this significant, still caught Lena off guard sometimes. "I think if it's about closure and nothing else, you should meet him. But somewhere public, somewhere safe. And you should tell me exactly when and where you're going." "Agreed." Victor stood, holding Owen against his shoulder. "I'll set it up for next week. Coffee shop downtown, middle of the day. I'll text you the address." "Victor?" He turned back. "Be careful. People from that life, they don't always want what they say they want." "I know." His expression was serious. "But I can handle it, and if I can't, I'll walk away. That's a promise." Lena nodded, trying to ignore the anxiety coiling in her chest. This was what she'd signed up for, being with someone who had a complicated past, who had made enemies, who couldn't just erase 6 years of his life no matter how much he wanted to. But knowing it intellectually and feeling comfortable with it emotionally were two different things. That night, after Owen was asleep, Lena found herself pacing in her room. She'd been living in Victor's house for over a month now, and technically she still had her own space, her own bedroom separate from his. They'd maintained that boundary carefully, both sleeping in their respective rooms, both respecting the slow pace she'd insisted on. But lately, the separation felt less like safety and more like cowardice. She was falling in love with him again. Or maybe she'd never stopped. Either way, the feelings were there, growing stronger every day, and she was running out of reasons to keep him at arm's length. Before she could talk herself out of it, Lena walked down the hall to Victor's room. The door was slightly ajar, and she could see him sitting up in bed, reading one of the parenting books Caroline had recommended. She knocked softly. Victor looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Everything okay? Can I come in?" "Of course." Lena walked in and sat on the edge of his bed, suddenly nervous. Victor set his book aside and gave her his full attention. "I've been thinking," she said. "About?" "Us. This arrangement. The boundaries I set." Victor went very still. "Okay. I think I might be ready for them to change, not completely, not all at once, but..." She took a breath. "I miss you. Not just as Owen's father or as my co-parent. I miss us. The way we used to talk for hours. The way you used to make me laugh. The way I felt when you looked at me like I was the most important person in the world. Lena, let me finish." Her hands were shaking. "I know I said we'd take things slow, and we have. But I'm starting to realize that slow doesn't mean we have to be strangers living in the same house. I want more. I want to know you again, the new you. I want to rebuild what we had, but better this time, stronger. Victor's hand reached out and covered hers. Are you sure? Because I don't want you to feel pressured. I can wait as long as you need. I'm sure. Terrified, but sure. Lena turned her hand over so their fingers could lace together. I'm not saying I'm ready to move into your room or anything dramatic like that, but maybe we could start having dinner together after Owen goes to bed. Actually talking, not just discussing schedules and doctor's appointments. Maybe we could remember how to be people together, not just parents. Victor's smile was slow and genuine. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. Yeah? Yeah. He squeezed her hand. I've missed you too, Lena. Every day. But I was trying so hard to respect your boundaries that I forgot we could adjust them when you were ready. I'm ready. She stood up, suddenly self-conscious. So, tomorrow night? After Owen's bedtime? It's a date! Lena smiled and headed for the door, but Victor's voice stopped her. Lena? She turned. Thank you for trusting me enough to try again. I know it's not easy. Nothing worth having is ever easy, she said softly. But you're worth it. We're worth it. She left before she could see the emotion that crossed his face, but she felt it in the air between them. Hope, fragile and precious. Their first dinner alone together was awkward in the best way. Victor had ordered takeout from the Thai place Lena used to love, and he'd set the table in the dining room they never used with actual candles and cloth napkins. It was simultaneously too much and exactly right. This is weird, isn't it? Lena said, settling into her chair. Extremely weird. Victor poured her water from a pitcher. I haven't been on a date in 2 years, and technically this isn't even a date, it's just dinner, but I'm more nervous than I've been for anything, except maybe the first time I changed Owen's diaper. Lena laughed, and just like that, the tension broke. They talked about everything and nothing. Victor told her about his new security consulting business, about the clients he was signing, about his plans to eventually hire a small team. Lena talked about her ideas for freelance design work, about the portfolio she wanted to build, about her dreams of eventually running her own small studio. You should do it, Victor said. I could help set it up. Not financially, unless you want that, but connections, advice, whatever you need. I might take you up on that. Eventually. Lena took a bite of pad thai. Right now, I'm still adjusting to the idea that I can think about my career again. For so long, it was just about survival. You don't have to survive anymore. You get to live. The words hit her harder than they should have. She set down her fork and looked at him across the candlelight. How do you do that? She asked. Do what? Say exactly what I need to hear without even trying. Victor's expression softened. Because I know you. I've always known you, Lena. Even when we were apart, even when I didn't know where you were or how you were doing, I knew you. Some things don't change. A lot of things changed. Not the important things. He reached across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, she placed her hand in his. You're still the woman who sees the best in people, who fights for what she believes in, who loves so fiercely that it scares you sometimes. That hasn't changed. Lena's throat tightened. You've changed, though. You're different from the man I left. I hope so. That man didn't deserve you. I'm trying to become someone who does. You already are, she whispered. They finished dinner talking about lighter things. Owen's upcoming 4-month checkup, the landscaping Victor wanted to add to the garden in spring, Caroline's endless supply of parenting anecdotes. But underneath the casual conversation ran a current of something deeper, something that felt like coming home. When they'd cleaned up the dishes together, Victor walked Lena to her bedroom door. Thank you for tonight, he said. I needed that. Us. Just being us. Me too. Lena hesitated, then stood on her tiptoes and pressed a kiss to his cheek. Same time tomorrow? Victor's hand came up to touch where her lips had been. I'll be there. She slipped into her room, and only when the door was closed did she allow herself to smile like a teenager after her first date. This was dangerous territory, letting herself feel this much, want this much. But it was also exhilarating. For the first time since that freezing morning when she'd sent that desperate text, Lena felt like she wasn't just surviving. She was actually living. The meeting with Marco's brother happened on a Tuesday. Victor left the house at 10 in the morning, kissed Owen goodbye, and squeezed Lena's hand before heading out. She watched from the window as his car pulled down the driveway, anxiety knotting in her stomach. "He'll be fine," Caroline said from behind her. "That man's been through worse than a difficult conversation." "I know, I just worry." "That's what we do when we love someone." Caroline adjusted Owen in her arms. "But worry won't change the outcome. Come help me with this little one's tummy time. He's been fighting it today." Lena tried to focus on Owen, but her mind kept drifting to Victor. What was being said? Was it really just about closure? What if it was a trap? Her phone buzzed 45 minutes later. "Victor. Meeting going well. Just talking. Be home by lunch." Lena exhaled the breath she'd been holding. When Victor returned 2 hours later, he looked exhausted but relieved. He found Lena in the nursery and pulled her into a hug that lasted long enough to tell her everything about how the meeting had gone. "Tell me," she said when they finally separated. Victor sank into the rocking chair. "His name is Anthony. He wanted to know why I helped Marco after what I did to him. I told him the truth, that I was trying to make amends, that I knew I couldn't fix what I'd broken, but I wanted to try anyway." "How did he take it?" "Better than I expected. He was angry at first, said money didn't bring his niece back, and he's right. Nothing will." Victor's voice was rough, but he also said that Marco's been able to rebuild his life because of that money. Got a new job, started therapy, even started dating again. Anthony wanted me to know that the help mattered, even if it couldn't erase the past. Lena sat on the ottoman in front of him. That must have been hard to hear. It was, but it was also necessary. I needed to face what I did, own it, and understand that some things can't be fixed with money or good intentions. All I can do is keep trying to be better. "You are better. You're nothing like the man who hurt Marco." Victor looked at her with haunted eyes. "But I was that man, Lena. I can't just forget that. And neither can the people I hurt." "No one's asking you to forget. But you also can't spend the rest of your life punishing yourself. At some point, you have to forgive yourself and move forward." "How?" The question came out raw. "How do I forgive myself for the things I've done?" Lena took his hands in hers. "By being the father Owen needs. By being the partner I need. By living a life that honors the second chance you've been given. That's how." Victor pulled her closer until his forehead rested against hers. "I don't deserve you." "Stop saying that. You deserve happiness just as much as anyone else. You just have to let yourself have it." They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing together, drawing strength from each other. When they finally separated, Victor's eyes were clearer. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For seeing me. All of me. The good and the terrible. And choosing to stay anyway." Lena kissed his forehead. "That's what love is. Seeing someone completely and choosing them anyway." The words hung in the air between them. "Is that what this is?" Victor asked quietly. "Love?" Lena's heart was racing, but she didn't pull away. "I think it might be. Or it's becoming that. I'm not sure yet, but I'm open to finding out." Victor's smile was tentative but real. "I can work with that." Owen chose that moment to start crying from his bassinet, and they both laughed at the perfect timing. Some things, it seemed, were more important than declarations of love, like diaper changes and feeding schedules and the beautiful chaos of raising a baby together. The following weeks brought a settling, a deepening. Lena and Victor fell into patterns that felt less like cohabitation and more like partnership. They traded off night feedings without discussion. They made decisions together about Owen's schedule, his diet as they started introducing pureed foods, his sleep training. They had dinner together every night after Owen went to bed, talking for hours about everything from politics to their favorite movies to their worst childhood memories. And slowly, carefully, they began rebuilding the physical intimacy they'd lost. It started small. Victor's hand on her lower back as they moved through the kitchen, Lena's fingers brushing through his hair as she passed his chair, good morning kisses on the cheek that lingered a fraction too long. Every touch was intentional, meaningful, a question and an answer all at once. One night, about 6 weeks after their first dinner together, Lena fell asleep on the couch during their conversation. She woke up hours later to find herself covered with a blanket, Victor asleep in the chair across from her, and her heart so full it hurt. She got up quietly and moved to where he sat. His head was tilted at an angle that would definitely hurt in the morning. Gently, she shook his shoulder. Victor, come to bed. He woke slowly, blinking up at her. What time is it? 2 in the morning. We fell asleep talking. Victor stood stiffly, stretching. You should have woken me earlier. You looked peaceful. I didn't want to disturb you. They walked upstairs together, and when they reached the hallway where they usually parted ways, Victor to his room, Lena to hers, Lena found herself stopping. Victor? He turned. I don't want to sleep alone tonight. I'm not ready for that yet. But I miss sleeping next to someone. I miss feeling safe enough to actually rest. Could you just hold me, just for tonight? Victor's expression was tender. Of course. Your room or mine? Yours. It's bigger. They went to his room, and Lena was grateful he didn't make it awkward or read too much into it. He simply pulled back the covers on one side of the bed and waited while she climbed in. Then he got in on the other side, keeping a respectful distance until she shifted closer. Is this okay? She asked, resting her head on his chest. Victor's arm came around her, holding her securely against him. This is perfect. Lena closed her eyes and let herself sink into his warmth. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and feel the rise and fall of his breathing. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt completely safe. Lena? Victor's voice rumbled through his chest. I love you. I know it's too soon to say that, and I'm not expecting you to say it back, but I needed you to know. I love you. I've always loved you, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of that love if you'll let me. Lena's breath caught. She tilted her head up to look at him in the darkness. It's not too soon, she whispered, because I love you too. I've been fighting it, trying to protect myself, but the truth is, I never stopped loving you. Even when I was terrified of you, even when I ran, I loved you, and I love who you've become even more. Victor's hand came up to cup her face. Can I kiss you? Please. He kissed her slowly, carefully, like she was something precious that might break. Lena kissed him back with 2 years of longing and fear and hope all tangled together. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. I've missed this, Victor said against her lips. Me too. Lena settled back against his chest. But we're still taking things slow. I know. I'm not asking for more than you're ready to give. I know you're not. That's why I'm ready to give more. She paused. Not tonight, but soon. When I'm ready, you'll be the first to know. Victor's arms tightened around her. I'll wait as long as you need. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Lena dreamed of futures that didn't terrify her. Of a family that was whole. Of a love that had survived the worst and come out stronger. When she woke in the morning to Owen's cries and Victor already halfway out of bed to get him, she knew with absolute certainty that this was where she was meant to be. Not despite everything that had happened, but because of it. Because the journey through darkness had led them to this light. The next few weeks were a revelation. Lena hadn't realized how much she'd been holding back, even after deciding to stay, until she stopped holding back. She moved fully into Victor's room, though they kept her old room as a guest space and private retreat if either of them needed it. They settled into a rhythm of domesticity that felt natural rather than forced. Victor was still learning constantly. He'd graduated from parenting books to child development texts, already thinking ahead to when Owen would be mobile and verbal and in need of boundaries and guidance. He attended a new father's support group that Caroline had recommended, and he'd come home with stories about other men struggling with the same fears and uncertainties. There's a guy there whose kid is 6 months old, and he still hasn't figured out swaddling, Victor said one evening, looking both amused and sympathetic. I wanted to tell him about the technique you taught me, but apparently giving unsolicited advice is frowned upon. Lena laughed. You're becoming a regular suburban dad. Is that a bad thing? It's perfect. She kissed his cheek. You're perfect. I'm really not. You're perfect for us. That's what matters. Owen was 4 months old now and developing a personality. He was a serious baby, more likely to study faces intently than to smile easily, but when he did smile, it was glorious. He'd also discovered his voice and spent large portions of the day testing out different sounds, much to Victor's delight. "He's going to be a singer," Victor declared after a particularly impressive round of cooing, "or a public speaker, definitely something that requires vocal prowess. Or he could just be a baby who likes to babble. No, I've decided he's destined for greatness." Lena rolled her eyes, but she loved Victor's absolute conviction that Owen was exceptional. Every parent thought their child was special, but Victor approached it with the same intensity he'd once brought to business deals, which reminded her, Victor's security consulting firm was thriving. He'd hired 2 employees, both former law enforcement with impeccable backgrounds, and they were booking clients steadily. Lena had helped him design the company website and branding materials, falling back into her graphic design skills with surprising ease. Working together had been another revelation. They complemented each other well, Victor with his strategic thinking and Lena with her creative vision. They'd stayed up late several nights refining the company's image, debating color schemes and taglines, and Lena had loved every minute of it. "You should do this professionally," Victor said one night after she'd finished a particularly tricky logo revision. "Not just for me, for other clients. You're too talented to let this skill go to waste." "I've been thinking about it." Lena saved the file and closed her laptop. "Maybe once Owen's a little older and in more of a routine, I could take on a few small projects, build up a portfolio again. I could refer you to some of my clients. Several of them have mentioned needing marketing materials." "That would be amazing." Lena paused. "But I want to earn those referrals, not just get them because I'm with you." Victor's smile was proud. "Trust me, if your work wasn't good enough, I wouldn't risk my professional relationships. You're legitimately talented, Lena. I'm just helping you get your foot in the door." It was moments like this, Victor supporting her dreams, believing in her abilities, treating her as an equal partner, that made Lena realize how far they'd both come. The old Victor would have simply hired her and paid her, taking away her agency under the guise of helping. This Victor understood that she needed to build something for herself. That night, after Owen was asleep and they were getting ready for bed, Lena caught Victor looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Just thinking about how lucky I am." That's not nothing." Victor pulled her close. "6 months ago, I was alone in this house, convinced I'd lost you forever, trying to build a life that felt hollow because the people who mattered most weren't in it. And now you're here and Owen's here, and every single day I get to wake up and be part of this family. How did I get this lucky?" Lena's eyes stung with tears. "You earned it. By changing, by showing up, by proving every single day that you're the man I needed you to be. I'm terrified I'm going to wake up, and this will all have been a dream." "It's not a dream. We're real. This is real." She took his hand and placed it over her heart. "Feel that? I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Victor's forehead dropped to hers. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "I know the feeling." Lena pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "But we don't have to be scared. Not anymore. We've been through the worst. Everything from here is just living." "Oh, just living," Victor repeated. "I like the sound of that." They climbed into bed, and Lena curled into Victor's side like she'd been doing it forever instead of just a few weeks. His hand traced lazy patterns on her back, and she felt herself drifting towards sleep, safe and warm and loved. "Lena?" Victor's voice was soft in the darkness. "Thank you for that message, the one you sent that morning. Thank you for being desperate enough to reach out, even though you were terrified. Because that message gave me everything I'd ever wanted and didn't know I was missing." Lena smiled against his chest. "Your son has no milk. 5 words that changed 3 lives. Best 5 words ever written." She tilted her head up and kissed him softly. "Go to sleep, Victor. We have a lifetime of mornings ahead of us." "A lifetime," he murmured, already drifting off. "I'm going to hold you to that." Lena closed her eyes, listening to Victor's breathing even out, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. In the nursery across the hall, Owen slept peacefully, safe and loved, and surrounded by parents who would do anything for him. This was her family. Imperfect, complicated, built from broken pieces and desperate choices, and a single message sent at 4:47 in the morning when she'd had no other options. She'd thought she was asking for milk. She'd actually been asking for everything, and somehow, impossibly, she'd received it. 3 months later, Lena woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows and the sound of Victor's voice drifting up from downstairs. She checked her phone. 8:30 a.m. Owen had slept through the night for the fifth consecutive time, a milestone they'd been working toward for weeks. She got out of bed and followed Victor's voice down to the kitchen, where she found him sitting on the floor with Owen propped up in his lap, reading from a board book about construction vehicles. "And this is a bulldozer," Victor was saying seriously. "Very important for moving large amounts of earth. You'll need to know about these when you're older and helping me with the landscaping." Owen grabbed at the book with both hands, more interested in chewing the corner than learning about heavy machinery. Lena leaned against the doorframe, her heart so full it ached. Planning his career already? Victor looked up and smiled, and the sight of it still made her breath catch, just keeping his options open. Caroline says it's never too early to introduce diverse concepts. Caroline also says you read him engineering manuals when you think I'm not listening. They're age-appropriate engineering manuals, Victor said defensively, with pictures. Lena laughed and sat down beside them, kissing Owen's head and then Victor's cheek. "You're ridiculous. But you love me anyway. I really do." She settled against his shoulder. "What's the plan for today?" "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." Victor set the book aside and shifted Owen so he could look at Lena properly. "I've been thinking about the future, our future. And I have some ideas, but I wanted to run them by you first." Lena's stomach fluttered with nerves and anticipation. "Okay, I'm listening." "We've been living together for almost 4 months now. We're raising Owen together, building a life together, and it's been—" He paused, searching for words. "It's been the best 4 months of my life. Every single day with you and him, it's everything I never knew I needed." "Victor, let me finish." He took her hand. "I know we said we'd take things slow, and we have, but I think we're past the point of testing whether this works. We know it works. We're happy. Owen's thriving. We're building something real here." Lena's heart was racing. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to make this permanent. Not just living together, not just co-parenting, but actually building a future together with intention." Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Lena's breath caught. "This isn't what you think," Victor said quickly. "I'm not proposing. Not yet. I know you need more time before we talk about marriage, and I respect that. But I wanted to give you something that represents my commitment to you and Owen." He opened the box. Inside was a delicate necklace with a pendant that held 3 small diamonds arranged in a triangle. "The 3 of us," Victor said softly. "A family. I had it made specially. Each diamond represents one of us, you, me, and Owen, connected, supporting each other, forming something stronger together than we could be apart." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "Victor, it's beautiful. I want you to have it as a promise, not of marriage or anything you're not ready for, but as a symbol that I'm all in, that I choose this life, this family, every single day. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, to make it official in whatever way feels right to you, I'll be here." Lena took the necklace with shaking hands. The diamonds caught the light, sparkling like tiny stars. "Help me put it on?" Victor fastened the necklace around her neck while Owen watched with solemn eyes, as if he understood the significance of the moment. When it was secure, Lena touched the pendant, feeling the smooth metal and stones beneath her fingers. "I love it," she whispered. "And I love you, both of you." Victor pulled her close, careful not to squish Owen between them, and kissed her forehead. "We love you too, more than words can say." They sat like that on the kitchen floor, the 3 of them tangled together, and Lena felt a peace settle over her that she'd never experienced before. This was what home felt like. Not a place, but people. These 2 people who'd become her entire world. Later that afternoon, Caroline arrived for her daily visit and immediately noticed the necklace. "That's lovely," she said, leaning in to examine it. "Special occasion?" "Just Victor being thoughtful," Lena said, but she couldn't keep the smile off her face. Caroline gave her a knowing look. That man's been planning something for weeks. I've seen him on the phone with jewelers, sketching designs during Owen's nap time. He wanted it to be perfect. He succeeded. He usually does when it comes to you two. Caroline took Owen from Lena's arms and headed toward the nursery. I'm going to work on his tummy time. You should take advantage of the break and spend some time on that new client project you've been excited about. Lena had indeed taken on her first official freelance client the week before, a small nonprofit that needed branding materials. The work was challenging and fulfilling, and she'd forgotten how much she loved the creative process. She settled into the home office Victor had set up for her, complete with a professional-grade computer and design software, and lost herself in color palettes and typography choices. 2 hours passed in what felt like minutes. When she emerged, she found Victor in the greenhouse, as he often was in the afternoons. He was transplanting seedlings with the focused concentration he brought to everything. Those are looking good, Lena said, walking between the rows. They're finally strong enough to handle the outdoor garden. I'm thinking we'll plant them next week if the weather holds. Victor looked up, dirt on his hands and a streak of it across his cheek. How's the project going? Really well. I think I'm going to finish ahead of schedule. That's my girl. He wiped his hands on a towel and pulled her close, not caring that he was getting dirt on her shirt. I'm proud of you. Building your business back up, taking care of Owen, putting up with me. You're incredible. Lena wiped the dirt off his cheek. We're incredible together. That's the difference. Speaking of together, Victor's expression turned slightly nervous. There's something else I wanted to discuss with you. More surprises? More like an idea, a possibility. He led her to the small bench he'd installed in the greenhouse, and they sat down together. I've been thinking about Owen's future, about what we want his childhood to look like, what values we want to instill in him, how we want to raise him. Okay, Lena said slowly, and I realized that one of the most important things I want him to understand is stability, family, commitment. I want him to grow up seeing what a healthy relationship looks like, what partnership means, how two people can work through hard things and come out stronger. Lena's throat tightened. Victor, I want to marry you, Lena. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. I want Owen to grow up knowing that his parents chose each other, chose him, chose this family. And I want to know, before I plan anything, before I even think about when or how, I want to know if that's something you could see yourself wanting too. Lena looked at this man who'd transformed his entire life, who woke up every morning devoted to being better than he was the day before, who loved their son with a fierceness that still took her breath away. The answer should have terrified her. 6 months ago, it would have, but now it just felt right. Yes, she said softly. Someday, when we're both ready, when it feels like the natural next step instead of something we're forcing, yes, I could see myself marrying you. Victor's entire face lit up. Really? Really? Lena laughed at his boyish excitement. Did you think I was going to say no? I didn't know. I hoped, but I didn't want to assume. He pulled her into his lap, and she went willingly, wrapping her arms around his neck. You've made me the happiest man alive. You know that, right? Good. You deserve to be happy. So do you. Victor tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you are. They kissed in the greenhouse surrounded by growing things, and Lena thought about how perfectly metaphorical it was. They were growing too, healing, becoming something new and beautiful from damaged roots. That evening, they had dinner with Caroline before she left for the day. Owen sat in his high chair, successfully grasping pureed sweet potato and mostly getting it in his mouth. Victor had his phone out, documenting the milestone with approximately 40 photographs. He's going to hate you when he's a teenager and sees all these pictures, Caroline said, amused. By then, I'll have so much documentation that he won't be able to deny how much we loved him, Victor replied, snapping another shot. Lena watched them, her found family, this woman who'd become like a mother to her, this man who'd become her partner in every sense, and the baby who'd brought them all together. 6 months ago, she'd been alone and desperate and convinced she'd made irreversible mistakes. Now she was surrounded by love so abundant it felt like a physical presence in the room. After Caroline left and Owen was in bed, Lena and Victor settled on the couch with glasses of wine. Victor had his arm around her shoulders, and she was curled into his side, exactly where she wanted to be. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, Lena said, about wanting Owen to see what commitment looks like. Yeah? I think we should tell him the story someday. The real story, age-appropriately, of course, but I don't want him to grow up thinking we were always perfect or that love is easy. I want him to understand that we worked for this, that we chose each other even when it was hard. Victor's hand traced patterns on her shoulder. You want to tell him you left me? I want to tell him I made a choice I thought was right at the time, and that you respected that choice enough to change yourself before we found our way back together. I want him to know that real love isn't about never making mistakes. It's about how you handle those mistakes and grow from them. That's a good lesson. Victor was quiet for a moment. What about the other stuff? My past? We'll tell him the truth about that too when he's old enough to understand. That you made choices you're not proud of. That you hurt people, but that you worked hard to make amends and become someone better. I think that's more valuable than pretending you were always perfect. You're really okay with him knowing all of that? Lena shifted so she could look at Victor's face. I'm okay with him knowing his father is human, that he's flawed, and he's worked hard to overcome those flaws. That's more inspiring than perfection ever could be. Victor's eyes were suspiciously bright. How did I get so lucky to have you? We got lucky to have each other, and we got lucky to have Owen. Lena kissed him softly. But we also made our own luck by choosing to fight for this instead of giving up. I would never give up on us. I know, that's why I'm here. They finished their wine in comfortable silence, and Lena felt the rightness of this moment settle into her bones. This was her life now. These quiet evenings, this partnership, this love that had been tested and proven strong. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Lena was in the kitchen making breakfast when the security system chimed, indicating someone at the gate. Victor checked the camera and his expression shifted into something Lena couldn't quite read. Who is it? She asked. Anthony, Marco's brother. He's asking if he can come in. Lena's stomach tightened. Did you know he was coming? No, but I'm not surprised. Victor looked at her. I can send him away if it makes you uncomfortable. No, if he drove all the way here, it must be important. Let him in. Victor pressed the button to open the gate, and 5 minutes later, Anthony DeLuca was standing in their living room. He was a tall man in his 50s with graying hair and kind eyes that held a wariness Lena completely understood. Thank you for seeing me, Anthony said. I know I should have called first. It's fine, Victor said, though his posture was tense. What can I do for you? Anthony looked at Lena, then at Owen in his playpen, then back to Victor. I wanted to see for myself. The rumors are that you've gone completely straight, that you're living a different life. I needed to know if it was true. It's true. Victor's voice was steady. I'm out. Completely. This is my life now. He gestured to Lena and Owen. This is what matters to me. Anthony studied him for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket, and Lena saw Victor tense, but Anthony just pulled out an envelope. Marco wanted me to give you this, Anthony said. He's not ready to talk to you himself, and I'm not sure he ever will be, but he wanted you to have it. Victor took the envelope with careful hands. Thank you. I also wanted to tell you something. Anthony's voice was rough. What you did to my brother was unforgivable. The beating, the consequences, all of it. But the help you gave him afterward, that mattered. It didn't erase what happened, but it gave him a chance to rebuild. So I'm here to say that while I can't forgive you for the past, I can acknowledge that you're trying to make things right. That's more than most people in your position would do. Victor's jaw tightened. I can't change what I did. I wish I could, but I can't. All I can do is try to be better going forward. That's all any of us can do. Anthony nodded to Lena. Ma'am, I'm sorry for intruding on your morning. It's not an intrusion, Lena said softly. Thank you for coming, for giving him this chance to make amends. Anthony left, and Victor stood in the living room holding the envelope like it might explode. Lena came to his side. Do you want to open it alone? She asked. No, I want you here. Victor carefully opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. His eyes moved over the words, and Lena watched emotions flicker across his face. Pain, relief, something that might have been grief. When he finished reading, he handed the letter to Lena. The handwriting was shaky but clear. Marco had written about his recovery, about the therapy he'd undergone, about rebuilding his life after losing his daughter. He wrote about the anger he'd carried and how it had nearly destroyed him until he'd chosen to let it go. And at the end, he'd written something that made Lena's throat tight. I heard you have a son now. I hope you raise him to be nothing like the man you were. I hope you raise him to be everything you're trying to become. That would be the best amends you could make, creating something good in this world instead of destroying it. My daughter deserved a better world. Your son deserves one too. Make sure he gets it. Victor's hands were shaking when Lena handed the letter back. He's right. Yes, he is. Lena wrapped her arms around him. And you're doing exactly what he asked. You're building something good. You're creating a better world for Owen. That's everything. Victor held her tight, his face buried in her hair. I won't let him down. Either of them. I promise. I know you won't. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other up, and Lena understood that this was part of Victor's journey too. Not just changing, but confronting the consequences of who he'd been and choosing every day to be someone different. It wasn't easy, but nothing worth having ever was. 2 months later, on a sunny Saturday morning in early fall, Victor came to find Lena in the nursery where she was getting Owen dressed for the day. Their son was 6 months old now, sitting up on his own, babbling constantly, and showing the first signs of wanting to crawl. I have something to show you, Victor said. Can Caroline watch Owen for a few hours? Sure, what's going on? It's a surprise. Trust me? Lena looked at his face, open, excited, slightly nervous, and smiled. Always. They left Owen with Caroline and drove into the city. Victor wouldn't tell her where they were going, but Lena recognized the neighborhood when they pulled up. It was the arts district, full of galleries and studios and creative spaces. Victor parked in front of a small storefront with large windows and a for lease sign in the door. What is this? Lena asked. Come inside. Victor unlocked the door, when had he gotten a key, and led her into a beautiful open space with high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and natural light flooding through the windows. Victor, this is gorgeous, but what? It's for you. He turned to face her. Your design studio, if you want it. Lena's breath caught. What? You've been talking about eventually having your own space, building a real business. I found this place last month and I've been working with the landlord to hold it. It's yours if you want it. We can set it up however you need. Workstations, meeting areas, whatever you envision. Victor took her hands. I know you said you wanted to earn everything on your own, and you will. I'm not buying you clients or success. I'm just giving you the space to build it. The rest is all you. Lena looked around the studio with tears in her eyes. She could see it already. Her desk by the window, a conference table for client meetings, a creative wall for inspiration boards, her own space, her own business, her own dreams coming to life. This is too much, she whispered. It's not enough. It'll never be enough to show you how much I believe in you, how much I want to support your dreams the way you've supported mine. Victor pulled her close. Say yes, Lena. Say you'll take this space and build something amazing. Yes, she said through tears. Yes, absolutely yes. Victor spun her around, both of them laughing, and Lena felt a joy so pure it was almost painful. This was what partnership looked like. Not one person controlling or providing, but two people building each other up, supporting each other's dreams, creating a life together that made space for both of them to thrive. They spent the next hour walking through the space, planning layouts, discussing possibilities. Victor had already researched permits and business licenses, compiled a list of suppliers for furniture and equipment, and connected with a contractor who could do any modification she wanted. You've thought of everything, Lena said. I've had 2 months to plan. I wanted it to be perfect. It is perfect. You're perfect. She kissed him thoroughly. Have I mentioned that I love you? Not in the last hour. I was starting to worry. Lena laughed and kissed him again. I love you, Victor Moretti. Thank you for this, for believing in me, for making space for my dreams. Thank you for staying, he said softly, for giving me a second chance, for building this life with me. They locked up the studio and drove home, both of them buzzing with excitement about the future. When they arrived, they found Caroline sitting on the living room floor with Owen, who was attempting to army crawl toward a toy just out of reach. "Oh my goodness, is he trying to crawl?" Lena dropped to the floor beside them. "Started about 20 minutes ago," Caroline said proudly. "I've been cheering him on." They all watched as Owen strained toward the toy, his face scrunched with determination. He managed to move forward a few inches before collapsing on his belly, but the effort was there. "That's my boy," Victor said, beaming. "Future athlete, clearly." "Future something," Lena agreed, scooping Owen up and covering his face with kisses. "You're growing up so fast, sweet boy." That night, after Owen was asleep and Caroline had gone home, Lena and Victor sat in their bedroom talking about the studio, about Owen's development, about all the changes coming their way. Victor was propped against the headboard, and Lena was lying with her head in his lap while he played with her hair. "Can I ask you something?" Victor said after a comfortable silence. "Anything." "When do you think you'll be ready?" "Ready for what?" "For marriage. I know we said someday, but I'm not good at vague timelines. I need to know what I'm working toward." Lena sat up and turned to face him. "You want to set a date?" "Not necessarily a specific date, but a framework. 6 months, a year, 2 years. I just want to know what you're thinking." Lena thought about it, really thought about it. She looked at this man who'd proven himself day after day for 7 months now, who'd changed everything about his life to be worthy of her and Owen, who supported her dreams and loved their son and made her feel safer than she'd ever felt before. 6 months, she said. "I think 6 months from now I'll be ready. We'll have been together for over a year at that point. Owen will be almost 1, and my studio will be established. That feels right." Victor's eyes widened. "Really? 6 months? Is that too soon?" No, it's perfect. He pulled her into his arms. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. I love you, Victor. I want to marry you. I want to build this life officially, permanently. I want Owen to grow up knowing his parents are committed to each other and to him. 6 months feels right." Victor kissed her deeply, and Lena felt the rightness of the decision settle over her. This was her future. This man, this family, this beautiful life they were building together. When they finally broke apart, Victor was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "I'm going to start planning immediately," he said. "Victor, nothing huge, nothing you wouldn't want, but I want it to be special, perfect, everything you deserve." Lena laughed and pulled him back down to kiss her again. "It'll be perfect because it's us. That's all that matters." The next 6 months were a whirlwind of beautiful chaos. Lena's design studio opened in October, and within 3 weeks she'd booked enough clients to justify hiring an assistant. Her work was getting noticed, featured in a local business magazine, and she'd never felt more professionally fulfilled. Owen continued developing at lightning speed. He started crawling at 7 months, pulling himself up on furniture at 8, and by 9 months he was cruising along the couch with a confidence that terrified both his parents. His personality was emerging too, serious and observant, but with a sense of humor that delighted everyone around him. Victor's security consulting firm expanded to 5 employees, and he'd been asked to speak at a conference about transitioning from criminal enterprises to legitimate business. He'd been nervous about accepting, worried about drawing attention to his past, but Lena had encouraged him to use his story to help others trying to make similar changes. The speech had been powerful. Victor had stood in front of 200 people and told the truth about who he'd been, what he'd done, and how he'd found the motivation to change. Several people had approached him afterward asking for advice, and he'd ended up mentoring 3 former criminals trying to go straight. "You're becoming a force for good," Lena had told him after the conference. "Using your experience to help people instead of hurt them. That's beautiful." "It feels like penance," Victor had admitted. "But good penance, the kind that might actually make a difference." They'd also started premarital counseling, a suggestion from Caroline that they'd both embraced. Every week they sat with a therapist and talked about their expectations, their fears, their communication patterns, and their vision for the future. It was hard work, but it was strengthening their relationship in ways neither of them had anticipated. And through it all, they were planning a wedding. Small, intimate, just close friends and family in the garden of their home. Lena had designed the invitations herself, and Victor had personally overseen every detail of the venue preparation. Now, on a beautiful April morning with cherry blossoms just starting to bloom, Lena stood in her bedroom looking at herself in the mirror. Her wedding dress was simple and elegant, cream-colored silk that Caroline had helped her choose. The necklace Victor had given her 7 months ago rested against her collarbone, the 3 diamonds catching the light. There was a knock at the door, and Caroline entered carrying Owen, who was dressed in a tiny suit that made him look absurdly adorable. "You look beautiful, dear," Caroline said, her eyes misty. "Thank you." Lena took Owen and kissed his chubby cheek. "And you look very handsome, sweet boy." Owen grabbed at her necklace, babbling something that sounded suspiciously like mama. He'd said it for the first time 2 weeks ago, and every time he said it, Lena's heart melted. "Are you ready?" Caroline asked. Lena looked at herself in the mirror one more time, at the woman she'd become, at the mother she was, at the bride she was about to be. 7 months ago, she'd been terrified of this step. Now she couldn't wait. "I'm ready," she said. The ceremony was perfect in its simplicity. 30 people gathered in the garden under an arbor covered in white flowers. Victor stood at the front looking devastatingly handsome in his suit, and when he saw Lena walking toward him carrying Owen, his eyes filled with tears. They'd decided to have Owen with them for the ceremony, held between them as they said their vows. It felt right. This was a family being formed, not just a couple getting married. The officiant, a friend of Victor's from his new life, smiled at them warmly. "We're here today to celebrate a love story that proves transformation is possible," he began. "Victor and Lena have walked a difficult path to get here, but they've walked it with honesty, courage, and an unwavering commitment to each other and to their son. Today they're making that commitment official." Victor's vows were first. He'd written them himself, and his voice was thick with emotion as he spoke. "Lena, 7 months ago, you sent me a message that changed my life. 5 words that gave me everything I'd ever wanted. You could have chosen to stay away, to raise our son without me, and I would have deserved that. But you chose to give me a chance. You chose to believe I could change. You chose to build this life with me. And every single day since then has been the greatest gift I've ever received. I promise to spend the rest of my life earning that gift. I promise to be the partner you deserve, the father Owen deserves, and the man I've been working so hard to become. I promise to choose you every single day, in big ways and small ways, forever." Lena was crying openly now, and Owen was reaching for Victor's face with curious hands. She took a shaky breath and began her own vows. "Victor, when I left you 2 years ago, I thought I was choosing safety over love. I thought I had to protect our son from the danger you represented. But what I learned is that the most dangerous thing would have been keeping him from the father you've become. You are gentle when you need to be, strong when we need you to be, and more devoted to this family than I ever imagined possible. You've proven day after day that people can change, that love can survive the hardest tests, and that family is worth fighting for. I promise to always trust you enough to tell the truth, even when it's hard. I promise to support your dreams the way you support mine. I promise to raise our son with you in partnership and love. And I promise to choose you every single day, forever." The officiant pronounced them married, and Victor kissed Lena deeply while Owen squealed between them, delighted to be included. The small crowd erupted in applause. At the reception afterward, they cut a small cake while Owen sat in his high chair attempting to feed himself frosting with varying degrees of success. There were toasts and laughter, and the kind of joy that comes from people who've been through darkness and found their way to light. As the sun began to set, Lena found herself standing at the edge of the garden watching her husband, dancing with their son. Victor was swaying gently, Owen's head resting on his shoulder, and he was singing something soft that Lena couldn't quite hear. Caroline came to stand beside her. "It's a beautiful sight, isn't it?" "The most beautiful." Lena wiped at her eyes. "I can't believe this is my life now." "You built it, both of you. That's what makes it so special." Caroline squeezed her hand. "I've watched a lot of families over the years, dear. This is one of the good ones. You've both worked so hard to make it that way. Thank you for everything you've done for us. For helping Victor learn to be a father, for supporting me when I was struggling, for being part of our family. It's been my honor. Caroline's own eyes were misty. Now go dance with your husband. I'll make sure Owen gets to bed when he's ready. Lena crossed the garden to where Victor was still swaying with Owen. She wrapped her arms around both of them, and they stood like that as the stars began to appear overhead. Happy, Victor murmured against her hair. Incredibly happy. Good. That's all I ever wanted. Owen was starting to drift off, his little fists clutching Victor's jacket. They transferred him to Caroline, who took him inside for his bedtime routine, and then it was just Lena and Victor under the fairy lights strung through the garden. Victor pulled her close, and they began to dance slowly to the music drifting from the speakers. Lena rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, and thought about the journey that had brought them here. A desperate text sent at 4:47 in the morning. A man showing up with groceries and hope. A month of proving himself. A decision to stay. Months of rebuilding trust and falling in love all over again. And now this. A wedding, a family, a future that stretched out bright and full of possibility. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For changing. For fighting for us. For being exactly who we needed you to be. Victor's arms tightened around her. Thank you for seeing who I could become and believing it was possible. I wouldn't be here without you. We wouldn't be here without each other. They danced until the last guests left, until the caterers had cleaned up, until Caroline had said goodnight and driven home. Then they stood alone in their garden, married and happy and surrounded by the life they'd built together. Ready for bed, Mrs. Moretti? Victor asked. Lena smiled at the name, still getting used to how right it sounded. Ready for everything, Mr. Moretti. They walked into their home hand in hand, checking on Owen one more time before heading to their bedroom. Their son was sleeping peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling in a perfect rhythm. He's so beautiful, Lena whispered. He is. Just like his mother. They stood in the doorway watching him for a moment longer, this child who'd brought them back together, who'd given them both a reason to be better. In their room, Victor helped Lena out of her wedding dress with reverent care, and they fell into bed together, exhausted and happy. Lena curled into his side, her hand over his heart, and felt a contentment so deep it brought tears to her eyes. I love you, she said. I love you too. More than I knew was possible. We did it. We actually made it. We did. Victor kissed her forehead. And this is just the beginning. Lena closed her eyes and let herself drift toward sleep, safe and warm and loved beyond measure. She thought about that freezing morning 7 months ago when she'd been desperate and alone and terrified. She'd sent a text message asking for milk. She'd received a family instead. A father for her son who loved him with every fiber of his being. A partner who supported her dreams and challenged her to be her best self. A home that felt safe instead of suffocating. A future that was bright instead of terrifying. One message had changed everything. 5 words had built a family. And now, wrapped in her husband's arms with their son sleeping peacefully down the hall, Lena understood that sometimes the most desperate moments lead to the most beautiful transformations. Not because the pain wasn't real, but because it created space for something new to grow. Something stronger, deeper, truer than what had come before. Victor had been right that day in the greenhouse. Change was possible. You could take something dormant and help it grow into something new. You could transform from one person into another. You could survive the darkest nights and find your way to dawn. They had. Together. And they would keep doing it, day by day, choice by choice, for the rest of their lives. Outside, the cherry blossoms swayed in the spring breeze. Inside, a family slept peacefully, whole and happy and home. And somewhere in the universe, 5 words continued to echo. A reminder that desperation sometimes leads to salvation, that reaching out takes courage, and that love, real, honest, hard-won love, can survive anything. Your son has no milk. The message that had changed 3 lives. The beginning of everything.